Sure.
Good evening. Today is Thursday, May 23rd. This is the Education Committee meeting. My name is Nicole Kahn, and I am the chair of this committee. I'd like to start with attendance this evening. Please state your name and role, starting to my left.
Michael Roosevelt, School Board.
Tracy Osecki, School Board.
Ed Tate, School Board.
Andy Stanko, Superintendent.
Nicole Crawford, Director of Elementary Education.
Good evening, Al Funk, Director of Secondary Education.
Joe Hidalgo, School Board.
Ann Horner, School Board.
Linda Stone, School Board.
Bob Hickey, School Board.
Anthony Devlin, Director of Special Services.
Matt McCarthy, Tech Integration.
Jota Piley, School Board.
Thank you. We have a lot of community members. Everyone have a seat. It looks like everyone has a seat. And there is a sign-in sheet if you haven't signed in at the front of the table. Those of you that are in the audience joining us this evening, and this is your first time, if you wish to make public comment is reserved at the end of our meeting. And just like our other board meetings, we ask that you keep your comments regarding agenda items and limited to 3 minutes. Thank you. And with that,
Yep. Thank you, Ms. Khan. If you wouldn't mind indulging me with this statement. A reminder that for the most accurate and reliable information concerning our district, please refer to resources, websites, and social media platforms managed by the Pennsbrook School District. We advise the community to exercise caution when relying on the accuracy of social media and ask the community to verify any social media content with the district for accuracy. If you question what you are seeing, need a fact check, or additional details on the matter, please reach out to the district directly. Our contact information is readily available on our website at www.crsd.org. So before we go over tonight's agenda, I do want to send it over to our Director of Special Services, Mr. Anthony Devlin, who's going to give us a brief update, a legislative special education update. Mr. Devlin.
Thank you, Mr. Funk. Good afternoon. Good evening, board members and community members. I'm here just to discuss a recent update with age-out procedures here with special education students. Last August, if you recall, there was an update to the IDEA which redefined school-age programming, FAPE for school-age students, included those 21 through 21 until their 22nd birthday. So beginning in August of 2023, we increased the time that we spend with our students programming for them up until their 22nd birthday. So if we had a child who turned 22 tomorrow, that child would then therefore no longer be eligible for free and appropriate public education. Last week, Wednesday or Thursday last week, we were notified that the Pennsylvania School Board Association had challenged that policy, and the policy was revoked as of last week. It came suddenly, and shockingly, I was surprised that this had even occurred. Gave it a couple days to see what was going to happen. Monday morning came, 3 weeks left of school. We're starting to get ready for some graduation ceremonies, end of education ceremonies, say over the chief, so we had to put something out to the community. I alerted the community, those 16 families with students who would have been affected, to let them know of the recent legislative change. No sooner did I send that email, just hours, there was an appeal by the Department of Education, which in effect caused a stay, reverting back to programming through the age of 22. I put together a draft to go out to the families. I had it reviewed. It took a little bit longer than I expected. I sent out an email yesterday morning to the families of those whom I mentioned of the change, letting them know that we will program for their children through this time that the state can't make up their mind as to what's going on. I did personally call every family this afternoon to let them know that regardless of what the state is doing, is that I love my job and I like working with kids, and I don't think that the kids should go without services because the state can't make up their mind. So I welcomed and invited all the families to come back until their 22nd birthday. So that is the update, Mr. Vaughn.
That's great.
I think, Polly?
I just want to say that I really applaud that decision of the administration. It makes total sense to take care of these children for one more year, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Devlin. Okay, we have a rather robust agenda tonight, but a lot of wonderful topics, and I just want to thank in advance all of the speakers that we have that have joined us this evening to kind of share their expertise. So just briefly, we're privileged to have Lindsay Flanagan, who is from Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, as well as Michelle Adamus, our Council Rock nursing coordinator, to speak to us about Heart Safe. And then we're going to also speak about the Ukrainian refugee grant. We have with us Mrs. Shannon Hubeck, who's the district's EL coordinator, along with Mrs. Lena Hanley, a guidance counselor from Holland Middle School, and of course, Mrs. Crawford to speak on that topic as well. The PCCD mental health grant, PCCD stands for Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency, and we're privileged to have Dr. Casey Black, our Supervisor of Student Services, tell us about that grant award, which is in the neighborhood of $227,000, so we're very excited about that. Casey will also speak to us about some social emotional learning programs and the process and protocol the district will undertake as we explore these programs and implementation of these programs. You'll notice the BCIU projected cost. This was the item that was tabled at the last regular meeting of the school board of directors. So we're going to provide some additional information about those contracted services this evening and certainly answer any questions that you may have about that. Mr. Devlin will then speak to us a little bit about special education parent engagement and the pre-planning process for the special education plan. A reminder that that plan is due in 2025, but we're going to start to ramp up with planning activities very shortly. Mrs. Tammy Gary, our Supervisor of Curriculum and Instruction, will speak to us about some textbook pilots and their approvals, and also a couple of new course proposals that are on the docket that potentially could be implemented in the 25-26 academic year. And then we will wrap things up and put a bow on it with my counterpart, Mrs. Nicole Crawford, who will give us an update on full-day kindergarten. So we're going to dive right in, and we'll invite Lindsay and Michelle to speak to us about Heart Safe.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us. I'm Michelle Adamas, the District Nursing Coordinator here with Lindsay Flanagan. I'm from Children's Hospital, and we are going to talk about CHOP's program called the Youth Heart Watch program, and then how Council Rock already does some training with its staff, and if we can incorporate any of this into what we currently do. Thank you. I'll let Lindsay.
Do I use this or do you control the?
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Great. So, yes, I'm Lindsay Flanagan. I'm the program coordinator from Youth Heart Watch at CHOP, which is an affiliate of Project Adam, which is a national organization that is dedicated to preventing sudden cardiac death in schools and the community. So we're really committed to making AEDs available in all places where children learn, play, and grow, as well as providing education and other resources to help schools and these groups build full programs around their AEDs, so they're just not these devices stuck on a wall that people pass and have no idea that they're there. So we're here to help Council Rock become a heart-safe school. We've already worked with, we've been working with a lot of schools around Bucks County, actually. You might be familiar with the story that happened in Penridge. In 2020, a student had a cardiac arrest during marching band practice, and fortunately, there were staff on site that recognized that something was wrong, that they knew how to do CPR and that it had to be done, and there was an AED at site at that football field that could be used off hours. It wasn't a big football game where there was EMS there, and everyone was around watching. There just happened to be one at the concession stand ready to be used. There have been other cases locally, Ben Franklin in Philadelphia, Catasauqua in Lehigh Valley, Montgomery County, Lower Merion had a cardiac arrest this last year as well. And all these students were saved, and I really attribute that to staff knowing that something was wrong and being able to act quickly to save that life. So just some brief background, because I know I'm used to talking to nurses every day, and I know heart health and health is their background, so just some brief background that cardiac arrest is when the heart suddenly and unexpectedly stops beating. A lot of people call it a heart attack, but cardiac arrest can lead to a heart attack. We often think of it happening in older individuals or in healthy individuals, but really it's estimated that 23,000 kids have a cardiac arrest each year. It's one of the leading causes of non-accidental death in youth. It accounts for 75% of all young athlete-related deaths, and 1 in 70 high schools across the country experience a cardiac arrest on their campus each year. So current survival rates of cardiac arrest are as low as 10%, but in schools that have AEDs, a response plan, and staff who know how to respond, we can take that 10% and increase survival up to 80 to 85% in schools that are fully prepared. And just schools are a great place to target these programs like these. 20% of your community population are on a school campus every day. So a sheer number of people on your campus and through your doors, that just increases the risk of something happening to somebody, whether it's a student, a staff member, or a family member that's visiting that day. So Michelle has shared with me that there are 7 students that have known cardiac diagnosis in the district that require CPR and AEDs to be available. So those 7 students are across all age range, across all school levels, across the district. I know you're quite a large district, so 7 doesn't seem like a lot, but those are 7 that have known cardiac conditions. Any number of students, even staff members, can be living with heart conditions that put them at risk and don't know it. They're here every day, walking around the halls. Oftentimes, those 4 instances that I outlaid in local schools around the area that have cardiac arrest, none of those students knew that they had a cardiac condition before they collapsed. So our Heart Safe School program is here we can't always prevent sudden cardiac arrest. Sometimes we know they have a heart condition, it's going to happen anyway. Sometimes we don't know they have a heart condition. But what we can do is try to prevent sudden cardiac death. So if that person collapses and has a cardiac arrest, we can try to keep that person alive and bring them back before they pass away. So our program, for those of you who do have the slides, this is a picture of our Heart Safe School checklist. It's 14 points. It's quite overwhelming, or it can look overwhelming, but it really boils down into 5 major categories. So we really help schools. First make sure that they have accessible AEDs, that they are available within 3 minutes of anywhere on campus. Inside and outside, we have kids that are on playground, recess, sporting activities after hours. So we want to make sure that AEDs are accessible and can be applied to that person within 3 minutes. We help schools build cardiac emergency response teams, and that these teams are trained in CPR and how to use that AED. We ask schools to have a minimum, we're looking for about 10% of their school staff, but a minimum of 5 people in that building that can be trained in CPR and can help Michelle or whatever nurse is in that building respond. So it's not just the sole responsibility of one person that's trying to keep that person alive. We want to give them support and enough people who can get there quickly and help. We also help schools build cardiac emergency response plans. There's a procedure for everything in schools. So step by step in an emergency, in cardiac emergency specifically, what steps are going to be taken, how is that school response team going to be initiated, who's calling 911, who's starting CPR and using that AED on the wall, who's meeting EMS and directing them to where the scene is. I passed it on the high school on my way here. It's huge. If I pulled up to that school and you said there's a cardiac arrest in the library, I wouldn't be able to find the library. So I want to make sure people can get there quickly. We want to make sure that that team is trained in CPR and AED use, as well as having all staff awareness. So if you have 10 people on that response team in the school, we want to make sure that everybody can recognize a cardiac arrest and be able to notify that response team and get help there as quickly as possible. And lastly, we ask schools to hold annual practice drills. So you have your AED, you have your team that's trained, you have your plan. We help them put it all together and run a mock scenario so they can practice and be as prepared as possible in a real scenario. So we ask schools to do all these things, but we're here to also help them and offer you resources to accomplish each of these things. So we can help you take an assessment of the AEDs that you have on your site, help you determine if you need more. We have resources that can help you purchase more equipment or the pads and the batteries that need to be replaced at a discounted price if you need help with that. We can also provide CPR and AED training, hands-only training for free to the school. Some schools will opt for a certification course through the American Heart Association or the American Red Cross, which comes with the cost. Some schools can do that, and that's great. Other schools will opt for a 1-hour training where we come, we bring all of our equipment out, and we can lead that training for you. Again, it's about an hour, completely free, we cover all that. We also have, in terms of the response plan, we have templates. And being part of this national organization, Project Adam, we've worked with this group to create templates that have been tested through various different states. We share them with the schools. You're welcome to use our template. If schools already have some sort of medical or cardiac response, they're welcome to use their own and build on that. So whether they use our template, something they already have, or something else that they find through other resources, we can review their plan or your plan and give you feedback on how to build that, strengthen that, make it the best plan that it could be in a scenario. As far as drills, we can help you coordinate your drills on your site. Each school should have a drill. We can bring out equipment and help you run with your mannequins, an AED trainer to practice a real life scenario. And we can come out and observe and give you that feedback right after that drill happens. So you can really evaluate how it went and improve it for the next time. You can also offer loaner equipment for the drills and training. So if we don't come out and lead the training, or you do have certified nurses in the district that can lead classes, but you might not have the equipment, we can loan that to the schools as well, so they don't have to shell that cost of buying the equipment and other materials needed to hold it. And then, so after the school designates you complete all 14 steps, we can help you each year maintain your program. So we, every year we ask you to maintain your AEDs, maintain your team, keep your training up, your plan, and hold at least one annual drill. And every 3 years we ask you to renew, which means you fill out that checklist again, attesting that you're continuing that program. But it's not just you designate, there you go, you're on your own. Each year we follow up with you, just make sure there's anything you need to help run these drills and these trainings. And anything new that we have, these templates, this lending library that I just mentioned is a kind of newer feature, so we let all of our schools know about that. Even if they've designated in the past, we've made new training videos in the last 2 years that we sent out to all our schools so they have access to that as well. So those are all the free resources we help schools, we offer to schools to help them accomplish this. So really the only costs come in for schools is if you need to purchase AEDs, which I know Council Rock has plenty of AEDs.
So we do. We're very fortunate that we have anywhere in each of our schools, depending upon the size of the schools, anywhere from 1 to 3 AEDs, all within a 3-minute access time. And our athletic departments all have their own AEDs as well. So that's in addition to what is in the school. So we have well over 31 or 32 AEDs within the school. Also, additionally, the nurses actually we started last year and it seems to be very successful, is we started an in-house training and we call it school emergencies, and we cover AEDs, not the hands-on emergencies, because we cover a training with a familiarity and introduction to the devices. We also cover EPEN administration, we cover Narcan administration, we cover general school emergencies, and we present that in staff meetings. So what Lindsay is offering is an additional resource where we can actually do a hands-on AED CPR training, not a certification, but a training.
Right, questions or comments from Ms. Adams or Ms. Flanagan?
And then one last thing I want to mention is Senate Bill 375 is currently in the Senate to be voted on. We hope to be voted on by the end of June before this Senate year is over. And this bill will be called Greg Boyer's Law, named after a student in the Poconos who died in the year 2000 in a basketball game. And the bill would require schools and athletic playing fields related to schools to have AEDs, trained response teams, response plans, and drills. Basically everything I just outlined that we're working with schools to do. So it's not this, we're expecting this to be voted on and pass, which would probably, if it passes, will take into effect probably the 2025-26 school year. So I just wanted to make you aware that this is something that sounds like it's coming down the pipe. We'd really like to work with Council Rock before it becomes mandatory. Before I'm working with 500 school districts across the state. We'd really love to give you as much attention as we can to build the best program before we're inundated with requests from schools all across the state.
Great, thank you. I think we had a couple questions. Oh, are you presenting as well, or?
I'm just with Lindsay.
Okay, there is a couple questions, I think. Ms. Oseki?
Sure. So this cause is something, thank you, Ms. Flanagan, really near and dear to my heart, literally. My father had a sudden cardiac arrest, and the AED didn't get there in time. He was resuscitated, but he had severe and permanent lifelong brain damage. It is absolutely critical that people know how to use the AEDs and that they're accessible quickly, because that 30 seconds can, even if, I can speak from personal experience, even if they're resuscitated, I mean, it was essentially useless to resuscitate him. So I think that it's wonderful that we have this program, and I'm completely supportive of it.
Ms. Polly?
So Council Rock already has 31 AEDs, and we have training. What else are we getting through this program?
Yeah, so like Michelle said, your staff aren't getting that full hands-on training piece. It's more of an introduction to this is how you do CPR, here's how you use the AED, but our team will come in and lead that training. We bring the mannequins, everyone gets to put their hands on it, hear and feel what it sounds like to give those compressions, get to actually hear what an AED sounds like when you turn it on and it gives you every step. Also the feedback of putting together that full plan so everyone in an emergency isn't confused and not know what their role is when they're saying sudden cardiac arrest in the gym. People report here for help.
And what we currently do as the nursing staff is we introduce people to the topic of emergency drills. Everybody knows where the AEDs are. And when we do our staff trainings, we have a trainer AED that we turn on so people can hear what it sounds like. Our AEDs are all AED pluses, which they lead you every step of the way. They tell you exactly what to do, and can't hurt anybody by using them because it won't let you do something that you're not allowed to do. It makes you, it tells you what it is so that we can analyze and do things. So the main purpose is for everybody to recognize an emergency. And I know Lindsay's speaking specific to cardiac emergencies. As the nurse in I'm speaking to any school emergency that we can talk about. So any awareness that we can bring to school emergencies in our communities.
I think the biggest piece of our program is the drill, putting all these pieces together. So I'm specific to the cardiac piece, but you could also run drills on other scenarios as well and make this a full medical emergency program, not just a cardiac specific program.
And when Lindsay speaks to the drills and the checklist, we have a few schools in the district that have basically I think we stole CHOP's template and we use that, and we have emergency response teams in some of the schools. Most of the schools, we all have an emergency response team. It's just a matter of how formalized it is in every single school. So we all have our different ways. This would just be like formalizing the process so it looks the same in most schools. But we basically stole the template and used it.
Thank you. Mr. Hidalgo?
Yeah, thank you for presenting. This is good. I mean, I really am fond of Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, so a partnership here and something that's important is fully supported by the board, I'm sure. I was just wondering how we got to this point, who recommended it, who gets credit for doing the program or recommending the program? Did you approach the school district, or did somebody in the school district think this would be a good idea?
So I'm sure you were working on steps before I got involved. How I personally got connected with Council Rock was a parent reached out to me. Their daughter has a cardiac condition. She was actually looking for help getting a personal AED, which my team can't do at CHOP, but other people at CHOP can do. I connected with that, but I said, let me tell you about this great program we have. I got connected, I met with Dr. Sanko a while ago. And in the meantime, we were able to work with their dance studio, and we got their dance studio completely heart safe before we really got into the school district. So we were able to work with the dance studio. I got to train their staff. We ran a drill with students that are like mentees in the program as well. So that's really how I got involved, was a parent reaching out.
Okay.
And she connected me with the contacts here in the district.
So it will be a heart safe school district? Designate, how long does that take? What do you have to qualify to be designated?
So it's that full 14-point checklist.
Okay.
I have copies of that. We can
No, that's
have
fine. No, it's okay.
And I've had a school complete it in a month. I've had schools take 2 years to complete it. I think with the track Council Rock is on, it can be completed by the end of next school year. If we show that any of the steps already in place. And then when each school is designated, we get the school banner, it's about 5 feet long, that'll say Holland Elementary is a heart safe school. It'll have CHOP's logo on it. You get to hang that anywhere that you like. It seems silly, but it's really something that you get to be proud of and display it for your community.
Another level of safety we're looking for, so good. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I just want to speak to Ms. Polly's question in terms of, what CHOP is bringing with the national program with Project Adam is, as Ms. Adams pointed out, there are already, we have some work already that had started. There are certain elementary schools or maybe a middle school that have some of this and already used some of the resources that was available through CHOP. I think for us as Council Rock, as a district, we're talking about student safety, staff safety, adult safety. So whether it's to save one life of a child or a staff member or parent that's visiting is invaluable. With the exception of maybe some updating of AED parts or AEDs in general. It's a free program that's being offered. We're already kind of halfway there, but it provides the district consistency. So in terms of, having the plan, the practice, the drills, that's consistent across all of our facilities and our schools, I think is what is one major point of bringing this. And like anything with practice, to hear it and see it versus you hear it and actually do it hands-on experience is a very different experience. And the emergency response team, although we have things in place, this again kind of solidifies it, makes it consistent across the board, and having the drills also keeps everyone kind of on their toes, and it can be reviewed annually. And just for clarification, the drills, it doesn't impact the students during their student day.
So drills can be done however you like them to be done. They can be done on staff in-service day, they can be done in the summertime, they can be done however the board chooses they would like them done. It would involve a team of people to be available to do the drills in each of the schools. So it's however you would like to move forward. Whether it's students only or staff, whether it's staff only or staff and students. And at the high school level, they're teaching the kids CPR in their curriculum, as well as they just got a grant to teach the kids stop the bleed as well. So they do teach these skills to kids across the high school as well.
Excellent. Thank you for your time. So Dr. Sanko and Mr. Devlin, this is a program that we're going to follow through on and become the heart safe designated schools?
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay. I think we're shooting for much quicker than a year.
Oh, good.
We're more than halfway there. I think what you said and what Lindsay talked about with regard to the template will give us consistency. We do have AEDs in all of our buildings. Michelle and her team go around and train our folks with regard to EpiPen, Stop the Bleed kits, AEDs. This kind of packages it all nicely for us that we K to 22 have some form and function around this topic. And the example that Lindsay used early on with a young lady having a cardiac event on the field of band practice is very near and dear to Council Rock. So I'm excited that most of the Bucks County school districts are moving in this direction too.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
You all take care. Michelle, thank you, Lindsay.
Okay,
Okay, at this time, we're going to talk a little bit about the Ukrainian Refugee School Impact Grant. I'm going to kick things off by sharing some general information and background related to the grant, and then Shannon and Lena will be speaking a little bit about it as well. So it started off at the very beginning of this school year. Shannon, as Mr. Funk already shared, our great district EL coordinator, she and I learned about this opportunity for the Ukrainian Refugee School Grant, and we were very interested. Although it was very unique to us that it only related to a certain population of students, we certainly had the mindset that if it helps one student or one population, we wanted to definitely apply and learn more about the grant. So we submitted it in November of this school year, and it turned out that 20 districts in the state of Pennsylvania completed the grant and were awarded funds, which I have a total proposed allocation of over $124,000. So currently, we have 54 students and families who meet the criteria, the requirements for eligibility. So I will say that it's a very detailed list of criteria that we have to be able to prove that students and families meet. And that's a process that we have worked really hard on, along with my assistant Alicia Rogers, and working closely with someone from the Department of Education. And so it has definitely been a team approach to working through the grant itself, but there have already been some great experiences as a result of it, and we're looking forward to sharing some more about that with you all this evening. So the goal of the grant is really to meet the needs of students, our Ukrainian families and students, socially, academically, any way that we feel would best help these families. And so it was really important to Shannon and I at the start of this to be able to get feedback from our ELD specialists as well, to find out where are the greatest needs. And so they shared quite a bit. We reflected on what we could do to best meet the needs of our students. And so Shannon is now going to share what we plan to use the funding for. And again, as we have more and more students meeting the requirements, then more funding becomes available. So we're excited about this grant. After Shannon shares a little bit about what we plan to use the funds for and what we've already used the funds for, I will share a little bit more about Lena's unique role, which is also funded by the grant, before she shares some more information about some great work she's done. So Shannon, turning it over to you.
So as we started to work on this grant, we wanted to make sure that those unique needs would be met for our Ukrainian students. As you are aware, we had a huge influx of students, and so they came to us with very unique, specific needs. So we spoke with counselors, we spoke with our social workers who were outstanding in helping us, as well as our ELD team, to determine what would best really help with the use of the funding. After school programming, we had people that were hired as part of, those after school programs, Summer Academy, as well as Nights for Knowledge, to make sure that the needs were being met for our Ukrainian students. Some ELD resources and materials specific to our newcomers and those needs, as well as technology supports. We are in the process of ordering some devices to make sure that we can use not only for instructional purposes with them, but also for translation. Professional development, I can explain a little bit more about how we have started with someone named Tan Win, and he is an expert, distinguished, not only a teacher, also an author and a consultant, and he has worked very closely in the beginning months of this year with our team to make sure he specializes in language acquisition and also making sure that we are really prepared to meet those needs. And we have planned some community outreach and engagement. I think this is the most exciting part, that we're really getting our families involved and we're listening to what they need in the community. And so we've planned together some activities and we're going to continue to do more. The grant has been extended, so we have until September 30th of 2025, so that will really help us to continue to further enhance this program.
Thank you, Shannon. And I think it's important to reinforce the fact that our teachers do an outstanding job of meeting the needs of our unique learners. However, with this additional grant money, it allows us to enhance, to supplement differently. And so it's been a really exciting start to the process. It is my pleasure to speak a little bit about this community liaison role that Lena Hanley is going to talk a little bit about in just a minute. But as Mr. Funk already shared, Lena is a middle school counselor, and we have, as a district, really tapped into Lena's great work and her resources and her ability to translate for many, many years. And so when we originally received some feedback during our PQR exit report meeting with the Bucks County IU earlier this school year, they did recommend the idea of a community liaison for our English language learning community. And Lena, with this grant money, outside of the contractual day, has been doing a lot of work, which she'll speak to in just a minute, with outreach for our families. So I shared a little earlier about trying to get as much information as possible from our families to ensure that students are meeting the criteria for the grant. And one example of how we've been able to do that is Lena being able to translate and provide information to families in their language so that they can give us that information. We held a meeting a few months ago where over 50 members of that community came out to Chancellor Center and learned more about this grant. It was a great way to connect with them. We received feedback, and that's also because of Lena's great work with translating and forming some great partnerships with that community. So Lena, I'd love for you to take this opportunity to share a little bit more about the community liaison role.
Thank you for your very kind words. I'm very grateful and I'm very honored. And I would like to, first of all, thank our school district and our board members for this opportunity. I've been a school counselor in the district for about 7 years. It just so happens that I also speak a few different languages, so that became quite handy in reaching out to our EL families. A few years back, with a significant influx of our EL students, we started to track the need for additional EL services and support. Some of those included registration process, facilitated communication between families and schools, translating parent-teacher conferences, IEP meetings, assisting our families in simply giving them equal opportunities to access their children's educational programming and supports in our district. This spring we had a few different events. When being a school counselor kind of gives me a bit of that advantage as well. When our middle schools and high schools had their presentation for the parents for the transition from middle school to high school, we held one for our EL families to help with the language piece. Earlier this month, we also had a family engagement night with our Ukrainian families, and we were so incredibly grateful. This week, we had a EL registration workshop for our families as well. I think I speak on behalf of all EL families, and this is the great opportunity to say that they are so grateful to our school district and all the supports that we've been able to provide to them. The every little accomplishment that we've made to support them made a significant difference in their lives and their families. We hope to accomplish a lot more moving forward that will not only help our EL families, but it will also help our staff, and it will also help benefit our consular community in closing the gap of language and cultural barriers. So thank you for that.
And that's what's been the best part about working alongside with Lena, is that we really are, for the first time, engaging our families, our EL families, and making sure that their specific needs are met. Yesterday, as Lena said, we had a registration event, and that was really exciting to hear families, first of all, where they found the advertisements that we were trying to do, but also their specific needs that we can provide them to support our community and help to bridge that gap between home and school. We have some upcoming ideas, and Lena and I have a lot of ideas for summer activities to again bring those families together to make them feel as part of the community. The family specifically talked about English classes, and so we're thinking about things like that for the summer, getting those children together. And something that I'm really excited about, in the fall, we have partnered with a project called What We Face, and they are bridging the gap through art. And they're trying to allow the art community to bring awareness to Ukrainian refugees and their experiences. So I've spoken with Beth Lynch, who is our art coordinator, and we're hoping to not only involve our families in an art exhibit, but also to bring in our Council Rock North and Council Rock South art students to have them involved in the process. So we're bringing everyone together. Staff training is also very important, and that need for professional development has been ongoing, especially with the differences and the specific unique needs that we now face in our department. Like I explained, we are working in partnership with Ton Win, and we're hoping to move that forward using the funding to provide not only ELD specialists, but staff, administration, specific training. We've also been in contact with a program in Philadelphia who bases, it's called Nationality Service Center, and the Bucks County IU has recommended them to us as far as providing trauma-informed practices if that becomes necessary. But I'm trying to think what else we've done. We've done a lot of things in a very short period of time, and it's exciting to see what's moving forward. Our social workers, as well as Lena, have been a huge part of this, and they have been communicating with families and trying to find out what specific things that we can do for them, as well as our students.
I think it's important to point out too, community members may be wondering, well, gee, if that's something that's really valuable for those parents, can other EL families benefit? And just so you're aware, we are looking at that as well. For example, we may use a portion of our funding from the Ukrainian grant, but also we have Title III funds, we have our general fund, and there are other ways to be able to supplement the costs when there's something that we feel other students and families can benefit. So we are working closely regarding those pieces as well. So thank you, Lena and Shannon, and we're happy to answer any questions.
I had a question. I would just say thank you for the overtime that you guys put into it. I think that's amazing that I hear that happen all the time. And if I get a chance to say thank you for that, then I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm Casey Black. I'm Supervisor of Student Services for the district. So the first thing that I'm going to be speaking about tonight is the PCCD mental health grant that we were awarded, and Mr. Funk already gave it away, that we were awarded quite a large sum of money, and we were very excited and pleased to be able to share that with you. That is the maximum amount that they were willing to award, and we were awarded all of it. So we are excited to be able to use that to help improve the mental health of our students. It's going to be used over the next 2 school years. And so it will be to be providing counseling services for our regular education students in grades K through 12. We already use K&S consultants to provide counseling services to special education students receiving emotional support services. And this year, we were able to expand it to some regular education students too. And we received a lot of positive feedback about those services from both families and school-based teams. So we're excited that we're going to be able to bring it to a lot more students over the next 2 years. The services that they provide help to ensure that students are receiving regular counseling services. There are school counselors, obviously, in all of the schools, but sometimes they're pooled to do lots of things like groups or crisis situations, but these counselors are designated for the students that we choose for a regular amount of time every other week or whatever, however we set it up. Parents are providing permission for those services, so if a parent didn't want it for their child, they can certainly decline the offer. But it is something that most parents seem to be looking for, especially if their child perhaps is on a waiting list for counseling services, or they just can't find the right counseling services in the community for their child. I can take questions on that before I move to the next one, since the next one.
Ms. Horner?
Is this in person? It's all in
Yes, they're all in
person
person.
at their school?
Yes, yes. And so it will likely be close to 2 full-time counselors for K to 12. So it really is 8.5 days per week, so almost 2 full-time.
They don't do any telehealth?
No telehealth.
How does, Mr. Nate, go, no, you go ahead. My question was going to be in regards to, how do families qualify for this extra service that's outside of the school counselor?
So they usually contact the school counselor, and then the school counselor would usually attempt to do some of the counseling services with the child. If they feel that the child needs more, then they would talk about it with the child study team, and then they would be referred for the service.
Thank you, Mr. Tate.
Thank you, Dr. Black. Congratulations on that grant. We've heard a lot about the shortage of services available for school-age kids. Is the situation any better or any worse today than it was 2 years ago?
That's a good question. A lot of the agencies, so when we refer kids to outside agencies, we want to be able to have firsthand knowledge of those agencies as much as possible. So we have been, our social workers and our CARES team, which are our SAP liaisons, have been visiting this past year and the end of last year. We've been visiting all types of agencies around the county just to kind of be able to tell families, go in this door, you're going to see this desk when you walk in, just to kind of help them with that connection. What they've been saying to us is that they no longer want to have waiting lists. They know that that is a huge problem in the area. So these agencies are saying, if you call us, we're going to get you in right away. And so many can. They're trying to expand services as much as possible. The only issue we're seeing is that I don't know that they can maintain it. So they might be able to get someone in right away, but then the next opening might not be for another month or so. So that piece of it is not as perfect as we'd like it to be, but certainly improving.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pollack?
Yeah, so you said we use KNS for special ed, but we have never used them for regular education?
This year we started in January. So this was the first, and it wasn't, so for example, elementary school students had the possibility, about 5 students in each elementary school, regular education students, if they were deemed appropriate for this and their parent wanted it, they could see a counselor once every 3 weeks. So we had the services, but we didn't have that much of them. So this will expand it so that it will be more frequent and regular.
Can you give us some examples of what kind of counseling they offer?
So the things that they tend to work on are coping skills for students and emotional regulation. So teaching them different skills, trying to improve motivation or persistence. That seems to be a theme at the middle school level that I keep hearing about. Coping skills for anxiety seems to be one of the big ones too.
And are adults also, do they qualify to use it, or is that only for children? I'm talking about staff.
No, we've not offered it to staff. That's a good question.
Mr. Roosevelt?
Thank you. This sounds interesting. I've got a couple of questions. Looking at this first bullet point, bridging the gap between educational counseling and private therapy with families, when do families get involved? And what is the training or licensure of the counseling services, both in-house and as well as KNS?
Just to make sure, the last part, what are our school counselors' qualifications? So our school counselors are certified by the state for KNS. They are all supervised by a licensed counselor. They themselves are not all licensed counselors, but they're all supervised by one. When your initial question was more about when do families get involved, I would say that that would be when the permission is coming home, where we would say, this looks like an appropriate service for your child, are you interested? They would read the permission and then sign whether or not they're interested.
Thank you.
And I think I had asked this question before, so the awarded grant money, allows the district to have these additional counseling services or counselors, correct?
Correct, yeah, that's what the money is given.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Polly?
So I think this is really, really good. I just don't know, should we spend all the money for the K&S consultants? Were they like, I don't know them, I'm sure they're great, but are there other services that we could use it for?
You go.
Well, I just want to say, possibly yes, but not right now. So this grant was written specifically as a continuation of the previous PCCD mental health grant. So we are expanding upon those services that we did last year. This is coming out again of the PCCD grant. If you remember a few months back, I mentioned about the PAYS survey and that PCCD oversees the PAYS survey. With the aggregate information, they throw money out to the Commonwealth. What do you want to, like, how can we provide more support? So with all that data, they said, look, there's mental health needs. So they are offering this grant for any school district who wants to try to get money for that grant to work on certain things. So we're working right now on mental health. So there are different levels or services of mental health. So right now we're pretty much at I want to say, Keith, maybe how about the ground. So we are starting with the counseling, but there's other services that we can go up a couple notches. If you can just help me elaborate better with that.
Additional services that they could provide. So you're talking about like group services, truancy things?
Yes, things like that. But to remember, like with the PCC grant, there's the assessment that we look to. And then they want to say, okay, what are the tiered interventions? So here's mental health. So right now we're throwing out money for counseling, general, tier 1. Now with assessments, each year it seems that PCD has been upping what they're looking for. So that is what we're starting with this, and that each additional year PCCD may ask for more or look for different interventions. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was also going to say, I don't know if this exactly is answering your question, but maybe. So we have used other agencies in the past, and they had a lot of trouble maintaining staffing, and also their knowledge or understanding of students and education wasn't there because they come from the clinical world, and so we did have some difficulties, but with K&S we've had a lot of positive feedback, and we really they're maintaining all of their staffing. They don't, even when someone goes on vacation, the other ones fill in, so it really works out nicely. So we haven't had any issues, since, especially in expanding it. We thought maybe we would, because even some of the people I was working with to expand it were asking, will they be able to really maintain that? But they did throughout this whole spring. So we feel confident that they're a really good agency to continue a relationship.
They really are, but I just want to put a line where the school and the mental health outside providers, where that line is. So like, we aren't providing what therapy one would get outside at a hospital or at a private practitioner. What we're looking for is the society of school. What is preventing access and participation in that school day? And it could be things that have to do with possibly school-based anxiety and phobia, not completing work, not being able to advocate for oneself properly with peers and adults. It's not to go and work on things that would be done on the outside with a psychologist or private psychiatrist.
So like barriers to learning.
Correct.
Breaking down their barriers to learning so they can, succeed in the classroom.
Correct. Thank you.
Academically.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, sure, thank you. So the next topic is social emotional learning. program. So what we want to share with you tonight is a process of exploring available programs out there to try to find a good fit for our district. So in order to determine what type of social emotional learning program might be appropriate for our students, we're proposing to go through a systematic exploration process using CASEL approved programs. So CASEL, if you're not familiar with it, is a national nonprofit organization that has been leading the charge of ensuring evidence-based SEL practices as part of K-12 education for the last 30 years across the country. They conduct and review research on SEL programs to ensure that they're effective methods of reaching our social, behavioral, and emotional goals for all of the nation's students. Harvard's Graduate School of Education has also partnered with them, and they also work with them to conduct research on all of these programs together. This organization has now have 85 research-based programs that they then divide into all types of different, or sort into all different types of characteristics, including different types of effectiveness data. And so what we would like to do is use this organization's research to find something that is a good fit for our students. So our plan would be to survey stakeholders to determine which outcomes we are seeking for our students, and then sort the programs that have been research-based on those outcomes that we're looking for, and then also look at things like training, time, cost, and effectiveness, of course. And so what I wanted to show you was just kind of a snapshot of what that website looks at, what that organization looks at. There are lots and lots of things to sort on. On the left side, up in the left corner, you'll see the significant evaluation outcomes, and that's the real piece that I think we should be using to look at what is going to be meaningful for our students. So the survey itself would use those exact words to determine for our children which pieces are we looking to improve. And then we would sort the research-based programs based on what our community feels is most salient for our students, and then look at those that are most effective for those outcomes, look at the training time, the cost, and see what fits with our district. So that's the process that we would like to go through to kind of drill down into what we think would be appropriate for our students. Any questions?
Questions or comments? Mr. Secchi.
Thank you, Dr. Black, this is terrific. Two questions. One is, when you talk about doing a stakeholder survey, how do you define stakeholders?
Good question. So we initially were thinking teachers, but I do think that everybody has a stake in this, so that's why we kind of adjusted a little bit, and we do think maybe community members, parents, because we're looking at elementary students, I don't believe students would be involved in this, but I do think the other stakeholders would be appropriate.
So community members, people without, I mean, I understand parents, but,
Possibly. I'm open to anybody's input on that.
Okay. And then is there any opportunity for professional development through this program?
For staff. So that would be part of looking at the program. So they all involve some type of training. The teachers do need to be trained. So the program would be implemented by the teachers, not by counselors. So the teachers would need to be trained in it. And the training, having gone through this process, a similar process a few years ago, the training varies greatly for each program. Some programs take 1 year to 2 years to train staff to be able to implement correctly. Some just take a few hours. So that's part of one variable that we'll need to look at when we're looking at programs.
Other questions or comments? Mr. Roosevelt?
Thank you. A couple of other quick questions. Similarly, who can we thank in this cabinet or organization for bringing this to us? I don't know if there's somebody who is responsible for bringing our eyes to this. And the second thing is, how does this ultimately get implemented across? Does a child come to this, or does a parent come? How does this ultimately get developed when you've looked at all those areas of where the the community could have needs and what they offer and all that alignment. When it's all done, how does it get implemented across the?
How is it delivered to students?
Correct.
Teachers would be delivering it to students within the classroom.
So all students?
I believe we're looking at K through 8.
Okay. And then, is there anybody who brought this to our attention?
This is a subject that I've been passionate about for years, but I don't know how to answer that question otherwise.
So isn't that a requirement? I mean, I thought that is part of I think when I was talking with you, I thought you said it's part of the new requirements from the state.
Career readiness standards touches upon some of what we see or what was up there for SEL, but not 100% of it. So there's a flavor of it, K through 12, under the career readiness standards, but it's not as detailed as what you would see on the Castle website, if that answers your question. So it's not like we are not working with our children on developing, relationship skills and so forth, because we are doing that, the career standards. This is much more than that.
But what about the older students? So we have to do something similar for them?
As well, the older, like in high school students?
Yeah.
Well, so they would have gone at the elementary level through those social skills when they were younger. Then those career readiness standards is more geared to older students, which may be more about writing a resume, things of that nature, or how to advocate for oneself on the job, not as specifically social, emotional as one would think as it is at the elementary level.
So assuming this was offered, they develop the skills, and then in high school, they can write their resume or like prepare for interviews and so on. But it sounds like we are not offering this now, right? So these students never develop these skills. Don't we have to catch up?
We do, I would say we offer it, but on a much lower level. So our counselors do go into all of the classrooms to deliver lessons, but because there's just one counselor in a whole building, they get maybe 4 or 5 lessons per year in each grade level, whereas this would be looking at usually about 1 lesson per week for each student. So that would be a significant increase. So they have something, but you're correct, they don't have nearly as much as.
I mean, the first thing on your list was to improve academic performance. I mean, who could argue with that? Of course, we want everybody to increase their academic performance, and we want the students to be able to perform to the best of their ability. And if someone is anxious or cannot cope or fights with a kid next to them, of course they cannot improve their academic performance. So, I mean, I don't know, I think we need, sounds like we want to develop these skills, right?
We do. I'm chuckling internally because at first one on the list was to improve academic performance. That's holds true for all students. Below that were more of the SEL ones. So like I know that Ms. Khan and I would kind of think, I use that as an example, and she said the same thing. Like, of course, everybody wants to learn that. I was talking to Dr. Black, and Kate's like, yeah, we were going to start at the second one below that, where it is pro-social skills or more about reduced emotional distress, improved identity development agency, reduced problem behaviors with that. Because, of course, everybody's going to rate improved academic performance. So that's a standard, that's a given.
And isn't that tied with the mental health? Because from the presentation, I got that a lot of it was anxiety, was coping skills, and so on. So, I mean, it seems to me there is a very good correlation between these two, right?
Yeah.
So could you use the grant money for something like that?
Maybe later. Yeah, maybe later.
Thank you.
I think in terms of answering Mr. Roosevelt's question, I know it's been a year now for collecting this MTSS data, or is it Swiss data you called it? Swiss for the social, emotional, because that's a component that now we've given at the beginning, middle, and end, one full school year. I guess, Ms. Black, Dr. Black, when you come back and give us the survey results, it would be nice to see what the MTSS or Swiss data provides, because clearly, if you've ever stepped in, an elementary school between lunch, hallway, recess, classroom, these skills, having been an elementary school teacher, this is a resource, part of a teacher's toolkit that is readily available. I know there's technological advances with it. It's like a mini lesson. It's modeled, it's talked about, it's simple things like how to share in the playground the basketball, or what happens if you accidentally fall, or what if your team didn't win. And it just talks about it as a class, as we talked about the K&S counseling, how bringing in additional counselors that are for those individual students that need it, this now reaches all the students, right? For very general, basic things that can create barriers in a day. How many of us have children that have gotten off the bus and had a horrible day because something happened at lunch, or their friend didn't let them sit with them at lunch, or play with them at recess, or someone called them a name, or said something, that was inappropriate. Again, having lived this and having a young child and having also visited the classrooms and schools and playgrounds, this is part of their daily life. And as a teacher, you can't teach when you have 8 kids arguing and crying in your classroom because no one was sharing. So I think, to answer Mr. Roosevelt's question, I think it's always been a need. And I know Dr. Casey presented about 3 years ago a program. And I know there hasn't been a program in the district specifically. So thank you for presenting.
I'm confused. I don't believe I asked my question as if there wasn't a need.
Oh, I didn't say that. Right, okay.
I think to your point, I agree. A teacher, a school could help with some of these, but these are also some of the joys of parenting.
Absolutely.
Some of the highs and the lows of parenting. This is interesting. I wonder if Castle is the only one evaluated to do this. It sounds like something that the entire country has experience in on one level or another. Is Castle the only provider of such information?
Absolutely not. It is the leading one, though. It is the leading one across the nation. Like I said, and Harvard Graduate School is the one who's partnered with them, so they do seem to be having the most advancements. They've expanded the most significantly over the past few years, too. When I used them a few years ago, they had researched maybe 20 or so programs, and now they're at 85, which I don't believe any of the other organizations are even close to. But there are others.
This survey will be interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Funk. Good evening again. So this is the Bucks County Intermediate Unit projected costs for the next school year, 24-25. This is an annual projection of costs for special education services. It is a budget in the term of budget. These are the expected costs as of a certain date. Please know that special education needs change on a dime. So it's important that when we look to the intermediate unit, that we are cognizant that they need this information to staff accordingly, so that they have enough hands on deck in the event that there is a need by any district in the county. This is not an immediate cost to the district. It comes out maybe in 5 pays, one major lump in July, and then it's broken down 4 other times. There is a mid-year and a final year reconciliation process, depending on overages or shortages. I can share with you, those of you who are on the IU board, who have been on the IU board in the past, you can probably talk to your contemporaries, and you can see that it's never an exact number. No district ends at the same amount. It changes greatly. So it's broken down into 3 sections. Section A is the tuition cost. So we can see here that we have 4 students that we are planning on utilizing the services for the intermediate unit. So we are very fortunate here in Council Rock that we have the ability to program for a whole heck of a lot of students. So if you look at the costs, maybe if you want to look at the prior years, budgeted costs or expenditures by other districts, you'll see that we are one of the lowest districts that utilize services in terms of tuition from the Bucks County Intermediate Unit. You will also see that each year there is an annual estimated tuition cost, and it changes greatly. And you could see that, you know, 1 or 2 students could throw off a budget by a couple $100,000. This is just tuition. It does not count for related services. So if I can go to the next page. So here are, when we talk about related services, that top section, you'll see speech language pathologists, physical therapists, occupational therapists. But hey, here at Council Rock, we have our own speech therapist. Those top 3 lines are about those services we use for the children who are in those IU classes. So we are estimating, you know, a 15th of a percent for each one of those. That's 15% of the students there. And so they're the cost of those services that we're expecting for those children in the intermediate unit program. So that is in addition to those tuition costs. Everything down is the district support, and that's what we're looking for. So we have, if there's ever a need of 0.15 speech therapists. Again, we can ask ourselves, well, hey, Anthony, we have 19 speech therapists here in the district. What are you doing? This is not a good use of taxpayer funds. But I will just tell this to you is that we had many speech therapists call out this year. We needed to rely on the intermediate unit for staffing to make sure that our students had services all year. So there's times when we need sub-coverage for these related services. The IU are the folks who provide those sub-coverages. Then you can just go down the list. The teacher, the blind, visually impaired, deaf, hard of hearing, physical therapists come into our building, and we're accounting for 4 occupational therapists. If I can just, one thing I want to talk about too, this is the cost per FTE for the certified staff. We are actually billed on their billing rate. So if the direct service hours, indirect service hours, and so forth. So then again, there's a reconciliation. So they're saying if you buy that person whole, you have to pay $177,000 for occupational therapists, or if you want to buy those services, it's a different based on the billing. So again, there's a lot of business that goes behind this. One of the things that I do is I work with my point of contact from the intermediate unit to ensure that we are meeting our students' needs as fiscally responsible as we possibly can. The next page are just additional services. This is just the nitty-gritty things that probably most people don't even think about. And this includes maybe C-print captioning for people who need large print. This is where we will see the cost for assistive technology. Mr. Ziegler's still at the IU, does a great job for augmented communication devices. That's in here. Accessible media is in here. We have hours of feeding services. So some of our kiddos who need to be, we need to assess their ability to eat, and their feeding teams and so forth need to go on there. And then if we need an instructional assistant, this instructional assistant would be an instructional assistant back at that tuition placement. So if you remember Section A, we may have a student there who may have been an $80,000 a year tuition. That didn't include the 0.15 speech, and it doesn't include the one teacher's assistant, which is another $64,000. So you can see how these costs quickly add up, but it's, it pales in comparison to the services that our children get on a daily basis. The next page is job development. So we have students who aren't in the Achieve program, who are at Council Rock North, Council Rock South, who have needs or who we can support with post-secondary transition employability skills. So we have students who work with job coaches from the intermediate unit who can help them with their soft employability skills out in the community to ensure a smoother transition into post-secondary life outside of the high school setting. So in a nutshell, I believe that our total projected expenditures for the intermediate unit next year, $2.1 million. We have that split to be funded by our IDEA grant, which is in the neighborhood of maybe 1.4, and we're looking at maybe $800,000 from the general fund to 50. The majority of this is being offset by our IDEA grant. Are there any questions? Yes.
I have a question. Can you go back a couple slides? One more. Yeah, that sounds good, we're right there. I mean, and I don't know how to do this, but I mean, who generates the costs of the teachers? And like, do we know?
Yeah.
Like for example, I'm looking at a teacher here, a physical therapist, the cost of the district of $191,000 a year, which for like a physical therapist, that seems rather high. You know, I mean, I'm just wondering where the, like, do we ever ask, like, where do these prices come from? And
Yes. Yes, we do. We do. I have a lot. So what it is the average price of that FTE. So the IU has, let's say, 10 physical therapists. And they have physical therapist supervisor. It is the average cost, expenditure. So don't forget that it's not only that physical therapist's salary, it is the FICA, it's the Social Security. So it's the total expenditures on that person.
And then I'm assuming there's a charge that the IU gets for whatever administrative costs or.
That's all in there. Yeah, that's in there.
I mean, for example, my sister's a physical therapist and her loaded cost isn't $191,000.
No, but if we were to break down their costs altogether for one FTE of service to your district, to us, that includes their overhead, their this, their that, their administration. So that's what that's in. Now, I will caution you that what we receive from the intermediate unit is more than a fee for service. There are deliverable services that they provide to us that aren't on paper. So I have, in the past, I have gone out to occupational therapists and I was like, you know what, the intermediate unit, you're too much money. I'm going to go out to a vendor. And you know what the vendor was? The vendor was just a staffing agency and they weren't an overseer of related services. So I had to take a crash course in occupational therapy. I had to learn how to oversee and how to supervise occupational therapists. I had to develop a data spreadsheet. I had to make sure that the direct and indirect service times were being reported accurately. So there's a lot of deliverables that the IU gives us that if we were to look at just that price alone, it doesn't compare. I mean, I can call the intermediate unit up and I could say to them, this is insane. I don't feel comfortable, almost $1 million in occupational therapists. What do we do about this? Then we put up a plan. Like, what are occupational therapeutic needs for? Well, it's proprioceptive, it's for sensory, it's things of that nature. So then how do we know who needs it, how much it should be, what does the national regulations, what do they say, what's the difference between school-based, medical-based? There's a lot of questions that go into that. So again, I'm just showing you all the numbers, I'm not showing you all the behind the scenes, but there is a large behind the scenes of this.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, I just want to, for the community members, those of you that arrived late, the public comment is at the end of our meeting, so,
Yeah,
okay.
I just didn't hear what he said about the number, that's all, I was asking.
Oh, okay.
The number for the occupational therapy, I didn't hear it.
Oh, there may be a number there, but there's much more behind the scenes of that number. Yes.
I got it.
Ms. Polly?
I have several things in my mind. So I was the liaison with the IU for 2 years. So I got to, now it's Mrs. Zeki. So I got to understand the organization a little bit better. And they are like, in this area, they are the leaders in special education. Among other things, they have staff that are extremely good at what they do, that it would be very difficult to find. And one of my questions all along was, how come we don't use the IU services more? Why don't we send more of our students there instead of some of the other schools around? And I don't know the specifics of each case. In many cases, I don't know if it's a cost question that we think that we can offer the same service here for less, but I would definitely like to look into that more and see how can we use the IU's expertise in this area in like with more students and maybe more support for people that they can send in as needed for our special ed students. They are really, really good at what they do.
They are, and I don't mean to cut you off, but what if, instead of exporting our students, we can import the knowledge? So think about it right now. We have a heck of a lot of our own students in our own buildings, in the neighborhood buildings, with their neighbors, their friends, their cousins, their siblings. We have imported already much of this knowledge from the intermediate unit. So through the intermediate unit, we were able to develop such great programs. That's where we are today. When we need more, we can import that knowledge. Speech, for example, we have a large speech program here. I am right now working with the speech folks at the intermediate unit with the knowledge to come here to help me do a program quality review to see how we can, if we need to strengthen, how do we strengthen the program, and how do we make it consistent across the board? And and I'll probably be coming back to you next year about our occupational therapy here too as well. Their services, what we can do here. So I agree with you 100%. And again, I said you can't take this lightly. There are other vendors out there who can say we can do it cheaper, but what's going to happen is that they're going to change their practitioners annually, so we're going to lose institutional knowledge. The IU will have the same. I think we've had the same occupational therapist here probably for 20 years. That's good. That's great. They know the families. They might as well be employees. Sorry.
Any other questions, Ms. Roosevelt?
Just for comparative interests, you have the data and are able to remind us what the total was last year and where the greatest area of change was? I'm wondering if it's speech therapy.
I don't have the greatest area of change. Our total was 1.9. I think it's greater by $400,000 this year, and I don't have where that greatest total or the difference was. I apologize.
Okay, that's all right.
Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you, Mr. Devlin, for presenting, and I apologize for having to pull it out of consent, but now we know. Yes, thank you. I hope that didn't delay you for the BCIU, did it? Getting it approved?
No,
your budget?
I looked into it.
Yes.
I talked to Allison Bill.
Okay, so then it'll go on next
It's gonna
consent?
be, maybe it'll go in ours, so it'll probably either go to there, if they're having a July board, it'll go on the July board, or it'll be in September. It's fine, I talked to them.
But for us, as a board, we can vote in June. Okay, thank you, thank you.
We're okay. I also spoke with Dr. Hoffman from the IU.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to update the board on some of the special education parent engagement, some of the, so over the year, I've received a lot of communication concerns, had a lot of discussions with our families here. At Council Rockman, I just got off the phone for about 15 of them with the age 22 debacle from the state. So some of the things I just want to brief the board on is our special education plan committee development. So one of the concerns I was fielding is that our last plan is expiring in June of 25. It was written June 22, and the committee wasn't large. So I'm listening, and what we're going to do is I'm going to open up for volunteers starting tomorrow. So I wanted to talk to the education committee tonight, soliciting volunteers from the community to be on the committee. Now, understand that a committee can only be so large, but I do not want to prevent volunteers, and I will work on a way to make it meaningful and reasonable. So, but again, first I'm going to solicit some volunteers formally tomorrow. Some of the things we also talked about, I've been discussing or listening to even some of the concerns coming from the community, is that there's just not enough discussion or people that I'm not listening, or that we need to have more communication, two-way communication. So I was thinking of starting, instead we're still going to have the informational sessions, because I need to share with the community some of the big things that we're doing. But I was thinking of doing something more informal maybe like having like a coffee cup discussion with me a few times, more than a few times a year, like on a Saturday morning. So we can just talk and I can listen and we can just share information and I can just get a better pulse on where we're heading as a district and what families need from the district. Another thing that we're doing is that there shouldn't be two silos. I mean, even if we're talking about, curriculum, I remember as a young teacher, I went to this big presentation and it was the director of special education and the director of curriculum instruction, and somebody brought out a manual and it said, special education curriculum. They ripped it in half. There's no such thing as a special education curriculum. There's one curriculum that all students are entitled to. Special education is about interventions, access, and participation to the general education curriculum. That being said, is that we're going to be including more special education initiatives, interventions, discussions here at the Education Committee. We're going to make one silo. We're going to combine those silos. So that is some of the hiccups that we're having in terms of getting some things done, but we're working through that. Another concern that I have been feeling are structured literacy concerns. So I just want to share with the board, we are on track to have a structured literacy plan up to the state by the August deadline. Again, we're going to continue to have special education information sessions. One of the things, especially when I met with families a few months back, talking about inclusivity, not just about academics, but non-academic and extracurricular as well. We had the unified track. We had unified athletics. I am now working with Patton through the department to bring to Council Rock an initiative called Michaela's Voice, and that is about inclusive opportunities for both general education and special education students to make a meaningful presentation, build relationships, and so forth, so that everybody knows, that everybody belongs, everybody can have meaningful access and meaningful participation. So I will have more information for you guys later about that. I just wanted to share that's one of the directions that we're going. And finally, the supervisor of curriculum and specialized instruction. This is inclusive academic. So again, we have special education students. Remember what I said about one curriculum? It's all about access, meaningful access and participation. So we have a great curriculum, but we need to make sure everybody has access, meaningful access and participation. So this supervisor of specialized curriculum and instruction will be able to help teachers develop meaningful lesson plans, essentialized curriculum, train them how to do that, and also when students need to be out into interventions, to make sure those interventions are peer-reviewed and offered with fidelity, so that students make meaningful progress so we can get them back into the general education classroom. So that is that. Any questions on that slide?
Questions or comments? Ms. Oseki? Oh, what, Mr. Hidalgo?
No.
Or,
please.
okay.
I had two questions, actually three, sorry. The coffee cup discussion, first of all, thank you. Thank you for listening to the parents, and I think this is wonderful and we're on the right track, and I'm thrilled to see all this. Question about the coffee cup discussion, if you don't mind elaborating on that, I think that's great, I'd like to join. But why that route versus, I don't know the technical term, but there's a special needs parent advocacy group that is more of a formal organization?
I'm just put it well, this because it's informal, it's not structured, and to be honest, I'll just come and listen. I have a lot going on during the week. It's kind of selfish on my part. I'll just come on a Saturday morning. Anybody wants to come and discuss with me, ask questions, what they see could be changed, what can be improved upon. So to be honest with that, I just don't have enough. I think this will be a better informal setting where people can just come as they see they need to come. Again.
So it would be like a standing Saturday morning at Starbucks or whatever?
Probably not Starbucks, but
The next question I have, if you could just elaborate a little bit more on the literacy plan, because so there's a special education plan that we're coming up with, there's
Yes.
a committee forming, it seems like that's gonna be a big process, but I don't know that I've heard about the structured literacy plan before tonight, so if you don't mind.
Well,
talking about that.
I apologize. We're going to have one. I really cannot speak to it, but it's on track to be done in August. It's really not a special education initiative, but it has come to me as a special education director, and I just want to feed back saying there is a plan in the works and it will be approved.
And you want to jump in on that?
Everybody, time again.
I'm Tammy Gary, I'm the supervisor of curriculum instruction. So structured literacy started, it's a state mandate. And what it looks at is getting training for teachers, and there's different certifications. So the kindergarten through 8th grade teachers are the main point, and special education teachers as well. Principals are included as well to learn about structured literacy, which is based on the science of reading. So it's a whole process of change within the state that's taking place, and it's different from kind of curriculum-based change or mandates because it focuses on professional development and certification. So it's a K-12 initiative with the state saying these are the expectations that we want teachers to know and understand, the science of reading and the instruction that needs to go behind it. Second part of it looks at higher ed and how they're going to be training teachers to become. So it's kind of a two-part place. So working with a team together with everyone in the room, we already had 2 meetings of the leadership team looking at creating a vision, using the state guidelines. They kind of have a needs assessment that you go through at each different level. So it actually starts from birth to 5. Then kindergarten, elementary, primary, middle school, and even going into the high school, although they're not incorporated with the professional development piece. So with the structured literacy, we look at the training of all our teachers to see how to make them the best and also incorporate the components. So universal screeners, looking at the MTSS process, looking at all of the components, and using the science of brain-based learning of how to teach reading. Because reading, without a doubt, is the most important skill that leads to your future success. So we're working with and together because the components of the program, and we'll talk about tonight, we're going to present to you our curricular things for piloting for middle school. But when we start looking at it, that piece of teacher training in regards to regular ed and special education, which already has started, looking at the materials, looking at the universal screeners, the MTSS process, because with MTSS, we're looking at interventions to get students to be where they should with benchmark on grade level. So we work together because we share students. It's not special education regular, they're all of our students, so we work together and we're trying to build, as you said, tear down the silos because we're all together, reading across the board for everyone. So again, the structured literacy plan being put together from the state because it's a mandate that you have to fulfill, have a plan together, how we're meeting the training obligations, universal screening and testing, and resources.
So the structured literacy plan, it will be submitted to the state is requiring it? Okay. Will we get to see it before it will?
It's actually, I think it's not a submission that we check off
Just so we
as to how it's reported. So it's not like a comprehensive plan, it's within saying that you've met the requirements of it. So yes, it's all going to be put together in public.
Awesome, thank you.
Mr. Hidalgo?
Oh, it was just, she said what I was going to cover.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. Any other questions or comments?
I'll make a brief comment.
Sure, Mr. Roosevelt?
Thank you, Mr. Devlin. I think that this is a great start. We've sat in several of these meetings, and I want to thank you for evaluating this district. You were only hired recently, so to come in and evaluate the district, realizing where there's areas of improvement and listening to community members and responding to their needs. This is another area where the more you listen, the more you understand how much is individualized and how difficult it can be for a lot of these families to be doing that. So I agree with you that it shouldn't be a fight, and I'm sure that that's welcome to many ears that hear that. So I think that this is a great way to continue to listen and to continue to adapt. So it sounds to me that if this doesn't work, if it's not enough, this is evidence that you're going to continue to evolve and continue to look for ways that Council Rock's about evolving needs as it relates to special education. So thank you.
Yeah. Slide.
Ms. Polly?
So when I was at the presentation, was a Holland Middle School? Or, yeah, with like the department?
Yeah.
The PD. First of all, that was a fantastic night. Thank you for organizing that and listening to what the parents have been telling us and responding. So one of the sessions, there were a lot of questions about curriculum and instruction for special ed students. And I felt that we did not have good enough answers. So when I see that we're going to hire someone that will do exactly that, I'm very, very hopeful that this position is exactly what we need to guide us to more of individualized learning and helping the students in the best possible ways. So I know you spoke a little bit about that. Can you tell us more about how you envision that position?
So my vision is, so what I did is I looked at the CPSG, is it CSPG, Help Me, Certified Staffing Program Guide, CSPG, for the special education supervisor and the supervisor of curriculum instruction. My daughter works at Park Casino as a poker dealer, so she taught me how to shuffle. So I shuffled them together, and I looked to see like what is what, what do we need, what is the most relevant of both worlds. So again, strong background of curriculum instruction, strong background of special education, pedagogical knowledge of teaching reading, meeting students' needs, individualizing instruction. Observation of the classroom, modeling best teaching practices, teaching teachers how to centralize curriculum, working with other curriculum supervisors on when you look at the curriculum map, you look at interventions and you look at extensions and remediation. They need to concentrate there. They need to see. And then when we look at assistive technology, tools rather, what tools are needed to ensure that the students have meaningful access, so they can be engaged into the curriculum. So that's truly what I'm looking at. Students, we talk about the quiet students, I'm not all for quiet students. I need students who put their hands up, who are engaged, asking questions, even if they're wrong. I need students who are engaged in education, and just because they may not learn as quick as somebody else, doesn't mean they don't have that out there or can't learn. My beginning days as a special education supervisor, and I was always impressed with Council Rock. I worked with teachers who lived in Council Rock, and we had kids here in Council Rock at that time in foreign language, in higher level math classes. So when I was at Bensalem, I modeled that. I wanted that. I had the kiddos who had an SLD reading in foreign language because, I thought that maybe being exposed to another vocabulary, another sound would help them draw conclusions with their own language, just to get them exposed, So anyway, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for somebody who has a strong foot in both worlds. We can help that. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Okay, one more, Anthony. Doing great, Anthony. Oh, sorry.
It's your inaugural, joining of the Education Committee. We appreciate you being here.
Pre-planning for the special education plan. So the special education plan, again, is ending by June of 2025. So right now, that website, our portal, is not up. Nothing could be done. Nothing can be done on that website. I can only ask and solicit volunteers from the community and just start talking about it. But I can tell the board what's in that special education plan. and that is the demographics. So the special education plan is just the demographics of the district. How many special education students? And it breaks it down to what they call indicators that the federal government's looking for. That includes like how many times students are disciplined, the race of those people who are classified. They look at LRE, they look at educational environment, and then they look at positive behavioral supports. They want to see to make sure that we're not adversarial, you know, that we're able to talk out of conflict instead of using our hands and so forth. But one of my most favorite parts of the plan is there is a spot for professional development. And the spots for professional development, believe it or not, and have always included literacy. It includes positive behavior supports. It includes training for TAs, which is near and dear to me. And it talks a little bit about related services. So my hope is working with community members and so forth that we can really concentrate on some of what those professional development needs are. You know, again, when we talk about our teaching assistants, we spend a lot of time with our certified staff, but don't forget, our teachers' assistants are in the classroom just as much. So one of the things I really want to look at this year in that plan is how do we train our teachers' assistants to ensure that they're providing what our students need. So that is due June 25. The school board will be provided with that plan to sign off on. It will be publicized for like a month prior to that at a library and online so that the community can see what the work looks like. So that is a special education plan, very in a nutshell. Super not.
Mr. Hidalgo?
Yeah, I got a text from my wife, so I was supposed to speak up. I just looked at it now. But it's back on the last subject. And she was talking about when the question arose, why don't we outsource to Bucks County IU? So a little bit about our story. With special services, we started with the IU when we lived in another school district, and it was just okay, you know. I mean, it was a lot of patchwork with personnel. Every year was different. And we didn't even move to Council Rock because of the special services. We didn't know what we were doing. We were just literally just trying to get closer to my mom. But what ends up being is we had a special services or in-house here that, you know, after we experienced it, it's way better than what the IU, I think, is providing or can provide because of the things that you had said. I guess my wife wanted me to say, from our experience, that Council Rock's life skills and this autism support program are very, very, very good. And now what we're doing is kicking it up a notch and listening to, you know, I appreciate and thank the community for speaking up and being more, you know, bringing it to our attention that we can improve. And I think that's one of the things we always try to do is improve. So I just wanted to say, I think keeping it in-house has been, doing that, making that choice in that community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Mr.
Sorry.
Mr. Second?
Sorry. Just, sorry, just briefly on the special education plan due in 25. I was just wondering, and this may not be where it's addressed, but I was wondering if it would deal with student-teacher ratios and classroom support. Will that be something that's in the plan?
Right, I'm sorry. There's a program profile, and that speaks to IEP caseloads. It talks to students if they're an itinerant, supplemental, et cetera. Caseloads have caseload max. That's where that speaks to those ratios.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Duvall. I wanted to say thank you for joining us at the Education Committee meeting. I know we talked about special education almost in a silo, and you've referenced that this evening where, you know, Council Rock is about educating all our students. And I think it's also about educating our community. You know, we do have a fantastic special education program. There are families that move to this district for this program. I think it's important for our community to know, and as, you know, like any program, as you have stated to me, that there are flaws and there's ways to improve, and this is one step to not only be communicative, but share with our stakeholders and community members and families. And I look forward to collaborating. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Ms. Polly. I think one of the reasons why we are so excited about the proposed supervisor of curriculum and specialized instruction is that our current supervisor of curriculum and instruction has done such an outstanding job. So it is a privilege. I know she's been before the Education Committee many times already, and even in a brief tenure here in Council Rock School District, but she brings a wealth of experience, and we're really hoping to clone Tammy with a new position. But Ms. Scarry's going to speak to us tonight about textbook pilots and new course approvals.
I'm going to start with the new courses. We have two different areas. So the first one is in our music department. Yeah, so this is a proposal. The two high school music departments have been talking, I guess, for a couple of years and looking at how they can draw more students into the music program. So they'd like to investigate over the summer and look at starting a course. When I say traditional, you think of like marching band and orchestra. This would be geared more towards, if you think, rock band, where they have guitars, keyboards, synthesizers, drums, vocalists, and looking at just a different avenue for students to have access to a course that they're interested in and bring more kids into the music department. So this summer what they want to look at is discussion, investigation of curriculum assessment, what it would look like, what gauge the interest in it, talk to other districts that already have programs like this, and then when we reconvene on this topic in October, either go forward with the proposal, with the work, or to say not at this time. So this is the first course. If it comes to fruition, it wouldn't be until the 25-26 school year. So this is just the initial discussion of starting a course in music. Other one is different. It involves 3 courses, but it's in a required area of high school social studies. So we currently have American Civilization. We have 2 levels, academic and honors. And in 11th grade for world history, we have academic and honors. What we're looking to investigate is to add the accelerated. So there'd be 3 levels, and that would be the same that they have in English language arts, math, and science with the 3 levels. So again, looking at this as a required course, it's not elective, and it's a summer investigation to look at the possibility of this so it's consistent and there's continuity between the 4 core courses. And that segues very nicely into our first pilot for textbook.
Sorry. There you go.
So all of the books we're going to speak about tonight are on display here tonight, and then we'll be over in HC2 for 30 business days. So you'll be able to look at them if you have any questions. So the first book, nice big heavy book, is the book that we would use on those 2 courses I was just talking about in 9th and 10th grade. And it's a chronology, so it actually starts in 8th grade with a different text in middle school. 9th and 10th grade use the same book. The teachers looked at all the different books and they'd like to pilot this book between the 2 grades. The really nice and interesting thing with this is that the component of the book will have classroom sets, but the technology, the whole book is online and it has access to many different primary source documents, videos, and it's updated so it goes to current day. So what the pilot would look like was having 2 teachers in South, 2 teachers in North. And one school's doing 9th grade, the other's doing 10th grade, and they have the training with the company, go through everything, look at all the technology resources, because it's very significant, technology used with this. And then we have classroom sets, use that, and have a full year look at both grades and how it fits together. And this goes up to, starting in 9th grade, it's looking at, they finish Reconstruction in 8th grade, so it picks up what they call New America. 9th grade goes until about World War II, and in 10th grade looking at agreements, policy of post-World War II, all the way up to current day.
Both in that book?
Yes, because it's the chronology of it, so it's all there. The next ones we're looking at are science. So already approved some science books for purchase. I remind you that the change in the standards to the new SEAL standards, the change is looking to go into effect next school year is the last year to prepare. The following school year starts the state expectation to the new standards. and the change in the state assessments. So again, just a reminder, the fourth grade, next year will be the last year for the fourth grade science exam, PSSA, then it's gonna move to fifth grade. So we will learn next year the state requirements and what the tests look like. And then also what more for eighth grade would stay the same than what biology looks like. So it's more comprehensive with the biggest changes, looking at the investigation of phenomena and really the infusion of technology and engineering across K-12. So in kindergarten, there's 4 different, we use FOSS kits. FOSS is the name of the company. These used to be Carolina. Smithsonian is Carolina, so it's just a different kind of publisher, but it's the same idea with kits behind them. There's 4 that we're looking at for kindergarten. These are mini units, so you get a kit, and these are the big books that they use in kindergarten when they're reading to the kids. So you get these, and then you get the materials, but just like the FOSS kits, these are replenishable supplies to do the experiment. So it's hands-on things. We have plants and animals and where they live, and it's an investigation where the students are really problem solving and looking at different habitats. How do objects in motion change? So it's about tennis and some sports things that they're looking at. Again, yes, it's the basic principles of physics that are all the way down to kindergarten. Staying cool in the sun, this is looking at shade and how you create different shape things and how you make them, and the kids actually make them. And then what's in the weather, last one here, and again, it looks at just the weather and the things that go along with it, the sun, the climate, and they do the experiments as well. So these are for kindergarten. Any questions for kindergarten? Moving down, kind of feel like Dan White to me. Second grade.
Mr. Hidalgo had a question?
Just wondering, how, 3 years? Is that what that is?
Well, what it is a kit, so you're buying the teacher materials, and you buy like the big books are included then. With the experiments, you have to replenish the supplies. So it's not like a regular textbook, it's a kit.
How many of those big books do we get?
That's for the teacher to read, so you get one for each teacher.
For 30
Each
kids?
kit.
Okay.
So like when they're on the floor and they're doing kind of story time or.
And that's
teacher
for
goes through.
all the class, all the sections in the school
Yeah.
district?
Yeah, but this is just the pilot. So
Okay.
it's 2 each year, for next year it's 2.
Sure, but
But then,
we're
yes.
talking about for the next years after that.
Yeah.
It's 4 units, 30 kids.
Yes.
Okay.
So second grade is an update for this one, which goes into mapping. Interestingly, science and social studies do have an overlap as does with ELA. Geography is one of the 4 standards of social studies, so this is a big overlap between the 2, and this is an updating to what we currently have. So mapping would be in gifted and at one of the elementary schools. I'm sorry. So next one, we have the 8th grade science. This past year, we did 7th grade, and that was presented to you for purchase. This is the companion to 8th grade. This is more of an earth science book, and this follows, as you'll see, with some of the books we present, especially in middle school. It's in the format where you have the online access, but also kind of the notebook, so you can write in it, so it helps with the students learning how to read, take notes, draw evidence, and have everything there and online together. So this would be 8th grade, just did 7th grade before. And then moving into high school, last purchase we did was for the honors biology book. Now we're looking at the other 2 levels of biology. So we have 2 books. At the academic level is this book, the BSCS biology. This set is set up very different if you want to review these books. This is a traditional where it does the units. So you look at environment, you might look at evolution, and they're separated by chapters. So this is a accelerated, so it's academic accelerated honors. This is a more traditional book. This one is set up for students to really investigate. So it sets up questions like, why is cholesterol bad? And then it takes the students through an investigation that pulls out additional information into students solving the problems. So you said the STEEL standards, looking at the phenomena and how they solve the problem. So this is the high interest, high application, academic level. This is more traditional for accelerated, and then we already have the honors. And the honors is what for students to move on to like an AP level. So that's for science. We have one or two things left for that, which will be updated next year, but this covers, I think, pretty much of everything. So we just have a few left. Any questions about science?
I do. I guess in terms of, so this gets us caught up to meet the requirements from the state for the new STEEL standards, starting for the 2025 school year. Okay, great.
And that's where we say we're creating everything right now, but what it comes down to is when the state releases the prompts for the testing, that also kind of steers you in different directions. Another new thing with it is comprehensive, of looking at all of the areas. So the big question with high school biology is how much it's going to include other areas. So we find out next year.
Thank you. I also had another question for, I think, Mr. Funk or maybe Ms. Guerra, if you wanted a question. It's a question I had asked earlier regarding high school schedule change for potentially looking into the modern music band class and the change in the social, the U.S. history. So I guess the question for me, or for probably high school parents, I'm not quite there yet, but would there be any changes to scheduling, staffing, and/or budget of acquiring of either of those changes?
Well, it would depend on what type of changes we would be talking about with the high school schedule. So right now, we have a 6-period day, 55 minutes of teaching and learning. It's a pretty efficient model in terms of teacher use. So teachers are teaching 5 out of 6 courses. If you were to say adopt a schedule that was more block-oriented, 4x4, where you have 8 offerings, typically teachers are teaching 6 out of 8. Certainly, it would increase the number of offerings that our students could participate in. So you kind of have your core requirement courses, like Mrs. Gary said, you have your social studies, science, math, and English. Then you have your elective areas, and we have certain requirements now. We have 23 credit requirements for graduating high school. Depending on if we move to a different schedule, if we had more course offerings, we probably would adjust the number of credits that we would require. It would really be dependent on what we landed on if we did look to change the high school schedule. Does that answer your question?
It does. So then in terms of, like, if we did nothing now and added this accelerated U.S. history course for 10th grade, it kind of sets it so it aligns with all the other courses, where in ELA or literacy and in math and science, there is a accelerated, and so that also aligns with U.S. history.
That's correct. So you have your core 4, and social studies just happens to be the only one of the core 4 that does not have that accelerated level. So what we're going to investigate this summer is possibly implementing an accelerated level. What we don't want to do, and this is going to be the work of the social studies instructors, we have a pretty highly stratified curriculum. So you have your foundation level, your academic, your accelerated, your honors, your AP. We don't want the rigor of the course just to be about, well, you do more work, right? It really should be about extending some critical thinking skills and your skill set, more than just, well, you do a 10-page research paper in this level, and you do a 6-page in that one, and you do a 4 in that. So that's the work of our social studies department this summer, to make sure that that accelerated level would be meaningful and appropriate.
There would be no additional changes required for staffing?
No.
Right. Thank you.
The last two to speak to, this one is a little confusing. So if you have questions, I'll stop and go over.
Oh, yeah.
What we're looking at, 6th grade is with elementary school. but in Pennsylvania State Standards, sixth grade is the first grade of the secondary standards. So what we're looking to do is to combine the program for sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, so it's more comprehensive for students. Problem is where we are right now. So sixth grade, their current text is called Collections. It's a Hope Mifflin hardcore product, but it's an older product. So when you change 35% of the content, you have to create the new book. So sixth grade has the old book. The publisher is sunsetting it. You're not going to publish it after next year. It's gone. Seventh and eighth grade use the product that came after that 35% change, and it's called Into Literature. It's the same publisher. They're common, but they're different. At the same time, I spoke to a little earlier about structured literacy. So publishers are changing, and there's a bill before our state legislature to look at if they should identify and qualify what publishers and what programs you should use with structured literacy. So hasn't been voted on yet, but it's there. So what we're looking to do is to combine and make a very cohesive program between 6, 7, and 8 that looks at many different components. Sixth grade in the elementary school is one class, reading and ELA. When you go to seventh grade, all seventh graders, there's 2 different reading classes, 2 different levels, and an ELA class. So in seventh grade, all students have 2 classes, reading and ELA. In eighth grade, it splits where all students have an ELA class, and the split between the students are students who need more support are in a reading class, and students who are more advanced could take a world language class. So we're looking to see how we could really strengthen that program, especially for our students who are struggling, by adding interventions to looking how we can incorporate universal screeners so that those students, because when you go to high school, you just have an English language arts class. So the seventh grade is the last grade where you can focus on reading. Eighth grade, the students have reading, need the support so that they're successful when they get to high school in reading across all content areas. So in having all these discussions and looking at, as we talked about the structured literacy plan and the different segments, about 2 weeks ago we got the sixth grade and middle school ELA teachers together and really had discussion to say what should it look like. So we did the needs assessment from the state. We looked at different products, so this is different because all of these pilots have already narrowed it down to a choice. We have 3 here that we're looking at. They're all different. So Study Sync is the product that comes after Wonders. So we use Wonders K-5 as our reading program. This is the program that comes after that. So that's this one. This one is the Into Literature, which we currently have. If we went with this one, we look to see how we coordinate between the 2. With these other 2, we want to align so that when 7th and 8th grade expires, we're on the same track. So the 7th and 8th grade teachers are in looking with the 6th grade teachers. Also, this one is called Amplify, and Amplify is the product that supports that we use for our DIBELS testing. So they're very science of reading based, and it's a really nice program that really adds a lot of content as well. So we have 3 different programs. They're getting together, they're going to evaluate, and we want to narrow it down to 2, and then during the pilot, have the teachers really look at both of them to decide which one is the best, based on all of our criteria. So where we are, and how it gets confusing, 6th grade has 1 more year, so we'd be piloting 6th grade next year. 7th and 8th grade, depending what product it is, if it's the same product, it's not that much of a change, we could coordinate the curriculums. But if we have to pilot the new program, we could look at 24-25 as like a year one pilot to coordinate everything, and then 25-26 finishes the contract on that. So our biggest thing is to make that part very cohesive and really focus on that strengthening the struggling readers before they get to high school. So that's 6, 7, 8 ELA. Any questions? They do better with that, it's not as confusing?
Yeah,
There's a lot there.
still a lot, but yeah, it was very good. Thank you. Questions, Ms. Oseki?
Yeah, sorry. Do you mind explaining, particularly about the ELA book? I'm wondering how the pilot works. Two questions about the pilot. So I'm a little confused, you'll have to forgive me. If you're in 6th grade and you're doing the pilot in 24-25 of the new program, are you then, the same child, going to also have the pilot, like, of the consistent program when you get to 7th and 8th? Like, I'm wondering about like an individual child who's in this pilot program, is their textbook going to be consistent in 6th, 7th, 8th?
That is what we're working on to depend, because next year, 6th grade still has the whole program collections. We'd be piloting with different, because there's 10 elementary schools, at different elementaries with partners, so we came up with a plan of what it would look like. So some kids would be in the pilot classrooms and some kids would be with the collections. So we'd have the two going on at the same time. Then the next year, it would roll out that all of the students would have.
In 6th grade?
Right.
But those 6th graders who
Sixth
piloted it will then be in 7th grade and there'll be another pilot.
Again, depending on which program you go to. So if it's into literature, it would be the same, it wouldn't change. If it's the changing to Amplify or to the sync product, you'd have, the second year, you would have some students piloting and some with the current program.
So my question is, if a child is part of the pilot program in 6th grade and then, not in 7th or 8th, is their academic experience going to be as robust, or are they going to kind of suffer because they're going back and forth?
So the other part that we're looking at is the science of reading is the program that the state's looking at that we're looking at. So the different components we have to focus on. So what I've been looking at through our DIBELS data, which is the universal screen, which is part of the whole program. So I pulled all the data for our current 6th graders who are going to 7th grade to say, when you move to middle school, it's different because we don't have the literacy specialists like we have there in the class to see what kind of supports are there. So at the same time we're looking at the resource, we're also building the program to say, how can we universal screen? What can we do to help all our struggling students? Because again, with the shift that took place with science of reading, we did guided reading for all of those years. So when you're looking at, you said the items of like decoding, the kids who were above the current 2nd grade didn't have the depth that our current kindergarten 1st and 2nd have with the programming. So we're still going to have to look at how we can help those students to achieve, because reading is so important to get them there. And this is our last shot. So it's not just building the program, it's building the support, the screening, and then how do we help with interventions to get them to the level that they can be successful as readers and writers moving into high school, where it's a much higher need to come in. So looking at it is to say if they're having problems with spelling, if they're having problems with fluency and decoding, those are skills that go back that we have to fix before they could really move ahead. So we're doing a lot of different things at the same time to make sure there's consistency, and then looking at the individual needs of the students as we move ahead. So in middle school, they have the 2 courses. So looking at, as they start to read novels that they're prepared for. And we're also looking at a couple of different ideas in 8th grade of how we could bolster and bring in some type of language, so the students who don't participate with the world language are still having exposure to some of those skills and options, so they could move on into their Latin or level 1 in high school. So I would say we're trying to be very, very intentional with decision-making and programming to make sure all the students receive the level of support. Because not even thinking of the pandemic, just looking at kids that might not have the skills to be successful, that's on us to make sure that all students are able to read and able to write. And middle school is a really crucial time, and I say, as a former high school person, especially for boys, to continue to read and have that interest and develop. And it's also building the vocabulary, because as you're looking at decoding and trying to see the words, you're moving into your science that has, Greek, Latin bases. So it's getting the kids so they can go and pick up a book such as our biology books and have that level of understanding. And as a former social studies teacher, so I always have to get the shout out so they can read and understand this as well. Any other questions?
Sorry, just if you don't mind, just talking a little bit about how the pilot works, which schools are chosen and how do we maintain parity?
Yeah, sure. So for the, we could start with social studies for it.
I don't need to know like the details, but I'm just kind of curious how it's decided.
It looks different for all of them. So there's a couple different pieces, because the teachers who are the pilots are the ones who are going to be initiating curriculum writing, who are going to be the ones getting training, and then they turn around and help the teachers when it's the actual implementation to become like the experts with it. So it has to be somebody who's able to be a leader and to step up and who wants to do it. So for example, for social studies, we have 9th grade is going to be at South and 10th grade is going to be at North. So Cat Point and Eric Reingold are going to be doing those. So what they do is they write up a plan of how they're going to do it and then how we evaluate it at the end. Because the biggest thing is it's great to choose one, but if like social studies, if that technology isn't up to speed, that could really not be a good choice. So it's going through a whole thing like that. So then next March, I think we did it, then we bring it for purchase to look at. For the science things, we have in kindergarten, because some are planning for it, it's 2 teachers are going to pilot each kid at that, and they're looking to see, there's a great conversation with kindergarten, so they're a little different, taking a look at it. Middle school, 8th grade, at Newtown, Dave Curry, at Howland, Jim Fox, 3 sections each. All the students will be online. They'll have the workbooks as well, and then all of the 8th graders have access to materials, so all year they can go on, and then they're in services, they can look and do. Accelerated bio. A and B at South has a section, and at North they haven't finished their schedule yet, so we have to see who's teaching what before we assign who's there. But all teachers reviewed the book. For Accelerated Bio, Alan, Nicole, and Colleen Finnegan at South. North is waiting for their schedule. For grade 2, it's going to be Rolling Hills piloting it with Patty Morrison as the lead teacher in charge of the coordination. And then at Goodnow, Holland, Newtown, and Soul Finestone, 1 teacher each is also going to pilot. And again, that's an integration with social studies as well. So all of those set up. We're still looking at the plan for 6, 7, because it kind of determines on which it comes down to and then what it would look like between. But usually the whole process is working with the curriculum coordinators and the teachers to see who has that leadership and ability to do that, because it is a lot of work. Because you're if you're doing 2 different things, especially at the older grades, you want to make sure that everything's right. And you really want to be testing and making sure you're fine. If anything goes wrong, you want it to happen early, not once you've purchased it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Scary. Topic.
Okay, full day kindergarten. So I'm going to begin by sharing a little bit about the community survey. And as you know, we have our community survey that ended up being sent out on Monday. And just want to share a little bit about the process leading up to that point. We did consider 3 different survey providers, and we ended up choosing Hanover Research. We've worked as a district with Hanover Research in the past, and we have been very pleased with their work. And I have to share, since that time, again, the team has been very impressed with their level of detail, their research-based practices, the level of expertise that their team members have shown on our calls. We've had several already. We were able to look at and solicit various surveys that have been used in other districts. We composed our own. And then we took all of those questions and we shared it with the team, and they partnered with us and created that survey that we believe is a very good product. I will say since Monday morning, we've had over 3,000 responses. And again, the goal of the survey is to gather the perspectives of our parents, our staff, and our community members. And so over 3,000 in 3 days, I think has been a very good response. Ms. Mangold's working really hard to get the word out as much as possible, publishing the survey near and far. We are also trying to think every day of any group that we haven't thought of yet, so no stone is uncovered. So we have even retirees in these last couple days that we're reaching out to various groups and making sure that not only our staff, our current parents, but also those community members that even had children go through Council Rock previously, or will have students in Council Rock in the future. So we're very pleased with the 3,000 responses that we've received so far. And that survey will run until June 2nd, and then at that point, several days later, they will provide us with an analysis of the responses, and we will be sure to keep all of you, as well as the community, updated on that analysis, and as soon as it's available, we will do so. But again, we're really excited, and we've already started to look at the responses that we've received thus far, and it's been very, very valuable. But again, I think it's important for the community to know that it's been a very positive and productive process thus far. So full day kindergarten classroom visits, I have spoken about this idea in previous meetings. We had 3 visits during the month of May where over 20 members of our staff went out to see full day kindergarten programs in action. So the 20 plus members of the staff consisted mostly of general education and special education kindergarten teachers. It's important to point out that all kindergarten teachers were offered that opportunity, and for various reasons, the majority of them did take advantage, but that did not include everyone. We also had specialists that were a part of those visits, as well as administrators. So the 3 districts that we saw, we began with Colonial School District in Montgomery County, and then Saturday School District, and then Westchester Area School District, which I have to tell you, those three visits and the staff and the teams that opened up their doors to us, they were very gracious, gave us a lot of their time. And again, the purpose of those collaborative visits was for our team to be able to see not only full day kindergarten in action, but we observed intervention time. They provided debriefing time where we could ask as many questions as we wanted. We were there for several hours for each of those visits. Ms. Gary was on those visits along with me. We learned about their curriculum, their process for full day kindergarten in terms of their exploration process, their implementation process, their timelines. The list goes on and on. It was a very valuable use of time, and we do plan, if given the opportunity in the future, to be able to continue that collaboration if we end up adopting full day kindergarten in Council Rock. But I did want to share a little bit about that experience. It was very positive. Finally, I want to hit on our presentation that we have planned as a team for our community on June 4th at 7 o'clock at Holland Middle School. The purpose of that community presentation is to continue to keep the community updated on the exploration process of full-day kindergarten. We really see it as an opportunity to condense all the work that the administrative team has done up until this point into one presentation. So many of the conversations and information that was shared at education meetings, finance meetings, and facility meetings. So members of the administrative team will be there presenting that information. We will also have some members from the visits that I just spoke about, so a kindergarten teacher, a specialist, and an administrator also sharing a little bit about that experience. And then talking about proposed next steps, again, if given the opportunity to be able to pursue full-day kindergarten in the future. I do think it's important to note that on the 4th, we will not have the analysis completed by Hanover Research just yet. We do expect days after that, though, to receive that report. So I'm happy to answer any questions regarding any of these 3 items or anything else related to full-day kindergarten.
I guess I'll work backwards. You already answered my question about the presentation and the survey data. The classroom visits, I know when I met with you, we talked about the 3 different school districts that you looked at. Can you speak to, Ms. Crawford, a little bit about how you kind of looked at different components? And they kind of each had their own specialty. I know you talked about purposeful play at one school district where you looked at curriculum kind of more at the other, and I forget the different components, but I know that you spoke very specifically about things that, you know, the visit had a purpose for these things.
Absolutely, it was, and that's a great question. We wanted to make sure that it was a good use of time and that the teams that were welcoming us into their schools, all of them had gone through the process themselves. So they realized what was useful for them when they were visiting other school districts. So they made sure that they asked us what we were looking to learn about. So Colonial, that was very much focused on their intervention time. We saw some flexible grouping, which means students in small group instruction have learned about, they actually have their kindergartners moving from one classroom to the other. Doesn't mean that's not something that we would necessarily adopt in Council Rock, but again, this is what the point that we're at, we're learning. So we were able to learn more about what that would look like and sound like. We actually spent a long time at Colonial talking about their schedule. And many of these districts started with a schedule for full-day kindergarten, and as one would expect, revised it based on experience and reflection, so they were able to share lessons learned. So we got a lot of great information from Colonial about their scheduling process as well. Souderton, I spoke a lot about purposeful play back in, I believe that was the February Education Committee meeting. And that was the district that I saw initially when the board did ask us to start to explore the idea of full-day kindergarten. And so the team went back to Souderton to see purposeful play. And that was really interesting and engaging for the team. They had a lot of questions about it, but they learned about the themes that Souderton uses for purposeful play. They talked a lot about the planning and what that looked like for staff development when they were implementing that, that component of the schedule. And even materials, really specific information about purchasing materials, lessons learned. Make sure, this was great because we often talk about, do not purchase anything until you look first at what's in the, what you have in the classrooms. There's a lot in the closet that can be used for purposeful play. So it was more of a focus on that. Westchester was the last visit that we had, and again, the majority of that time was spent debriefing. We did see play time or purposeful play during that visit as well. But the majority of our time in Westchester was spent talking to the teachers, the principal, their curriculum supervisor, their director of elementary education, and that particular Council Rock team really wanted to spend time talking teacher to teacher and really finding out, again, what worked well, what hasn't worked so well, what do you suggest that we look at when we're, planning for certain lessons. That was, again, time well spent. So yes, you're right, Ms. Khan. Every visit did have a little bit of a different focus, but they were consistent in the fact that it was about collaboration and giving our team an opportunity to hear from those in the trenches that have worked through the implementation process, and it was very valuable. So we do plan to continue to reflect on those visits, and they shared a Ms. Gary knows a ton of information, resources, schedules, their curriculum mapping, their training plan. And so we're still compiling all those resources, organizing them and getting them back out to not only the team of staff that went out, the 21 people that went out to these visits, but also I do plan to share those with the others that were unable to go and perhaps can go in the future.
Great, thank you. Other questions or comments? Mr. Hickey?
You may not have this information, and probably we're not gonna have it maybe in time even as we make this decision. But earlier you were talking about Dibble scores, and you talked about the beginning, the middle, and the ending. Because a lot has been made of all-day kindergarten providing children, that they get a head start on their reading and their with your education. And there's other contentions that by the time that you hit third grade, that everything levels out, it really doesn't matter educationally. But my thing is we just implemented a program, the Wonders program here, and I'm curious to see what that improvement was from September to now, if there was any improvement, because maybe the answer isn't necessarily putting kids in kindergarten, maybe it's the instruction that we're actually giving them while they're here. So I would like to know what that data is. If there's any way you could provide the data to what the program that we're currently using, what improvements are we seeing in our students that we're currently doing?
Let me just take that first part about the program. So again, that's Reading Horizons. That's what we use at the kindergarten level. And what we have talked about previously is that in a half-day program, you need to modify how you're using Reading Horizons. So we are in the process of collecting the end of the year reading data, and we have started to look at the growth and looking at the data, between the beginning of the year and the end of the year. But what we expect, or what we would, what we would think would happen with the additional time for literacy and using Reading Horizons the way that it's meant to be used in a full day program, that would benefit our students having that additional instruction. Is that what you're referring to?
Well, I know you're going to have an initial bump at the kindergarten level. There's no denying that if you spend more time doing it, you're going to be. My contention is by the time that these students reach second and third grade, that they've leveled out, that extra work that you did in kindergarten doesn't transfer to third grade. So I would like to see where our third grade is at as far as their scores are concerned. To see if what we're currently implementing, what we spend a lot of money on, is actually working. I heard, rumors, but as I said, only believe what you see on the Council Rock websites, that our scores, you're gonna see a marked improvement in that area. To which I would say then, well, maybe what we're doing then is good and it's right, and maybe we can use our resources elsewhere.
I understand. And we are looking at the end of the year data and compiling that as we speak.
Yeah, and as I said, I'm more interested in the second and third grade one as opposed to the kindergarten one where.
Understood. And that's something that we will definitely, as a team, compile and look at the best way to provide that information to the community.
And as a follow-up, the schools that you visited, I don't know how long that they've had an all-day kindergarten program. I don't know if it was 1 year, 2 years, 20 years. The question I was going to ask is, do you see any do they have any scores or improvement at their third grade level compared to what they did before, to say, okay, here's tangible proof that this indeed does work, or you do and see improvement, or the scores that they have now are basically the same scores that they've had from before they implemented kindergarten?
Colonial was the district that had the most amount of years since they initially implemented it. Can you remind me, was it 2016 they said? It's been a very long time since Colonial implemented, but they did not provide us with data in terms of any significant increase in student achievement or growth, Mr. Hickey, but every district did speak to the fact that they saw not only benefits academically, but they each spoke about the social and emotional benefits of students being able to have the full day program available to them starting in kindergarten. That was something that came up in all the conversations that we had. They did not provide data on that, but just again, just touching on.
Right.
And that's something that I can look at again. It didn't come up in those particular visits, but we can take a look and see if they have data to support that. But they spent a lot of time talking about just how it helps students. And we asked, how did they transition going from the beginning of the year to a full day? And they gave us tips and they gave us some really good insight into how the students, with the support of their teachers and their teams, really did a nice job transitioning into a full day program. And it's also important to point out that many students, certainly not all, but many are already attending preschool before they come to us or after they come to us. So many students are used to the full day. And again, they more or less hit on that in those conversations, but we can certainly look into some additional data that they may have in those districts related to academic achievement based on like any correlation between achievement and full day kindergarten.
Okay, no, I appreciate all the work that you and your whole team has put into this for the last 5 months.
We appreciate the support. I also just remembered that I forgot to mention when I was discussing the survey that Smangold has a hub that's up and running now on the website, and we are going to continue to add to it. So she already has quite a few things on there now, but as we continue and hopefully even before the presentation for the community, we'll have a few more resources available, and that's also going to be very important as we proceed with the next steps.
Are there questions or comments? Ms. Roosevelt?
Quantifiable data is very important. With respect to the survey that's gone out, I know that there was a concern from constituents and members of probably all of us about that survey data. The sample size is very important to get an adequate and quantifiable, sizable sample size, which sounds like we're on the way to doing. But it's also equally important to have a distributed and pure sample. So the concerns were, in past, we've had Hanover do a survey, and if you try to go in and take the survey again, it tells you this email address or this IP address or whatever has already submitted something. That's not happening this time, but I understand that Hanover is well-versed in scrubbing this data. I'm assuming that that also includes VPN abilities to come in from a different IP address or to ping different IP addresses so that you're around within Council Rock to do the same thing. And I'm assuming that the reason why Hanover doesn't say this has already been done is so that somebody trying to manipulate the survey, either one way or the other, doesn't have any idea whether they're wasting their time or whether they're contributing to corrupting the survey. So while I don't need an answer here online about that, it would be interesting offline if there's some data to that.
I think from the last time Hanover did a survey for us, the level of sophistication of screening and scrubbing that data has advanced dramatically because they use AI. They use metrics like how quickly was a survey answered, how many responses are being submitted that are all the same. So they do all kinds of ways of looking at the data in meta ways that we can't even think of that AI can. Just the human response, that human factors engineering that they plug in. And so they scrub that data, starting with, when we spoke with them before they gave us the survey, the question I asked, what's to stop somebody, a group of people from sitting in Starbucks and just answering over and over again, and they kind of, no, they can do it, they can submit it, but the data's going to be scrubbed because there are characteristics, multiple repetitive answers that kind of give it away.
Great, that's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Nice
They're very,
job getting around that. So
yeah, they kind of keep it up and on, because we made it very clear we were worried about that.
Yeah.
Here's another example. Let's just say I don't know, you have a parent that for the moment is working from Minnesota.
Right.
And they are legitimately a Council Rock parent, so what's gonna prevent the Hanover research people from scrubbing that data out of the system? If they submit 10 from Minnesota, it's gonna be a little different than just that one. And then they kind of look at the nature of the response. So we have saturated, talk about your sample size, saturated every possible venue. I made a list of all the different places where it is multiple times we've advertised it. So if you can think of another way to get it into people's hands or get it before them, we're happy to do it.
Great. Thank you.
Andrea, can you share where we have advertised and how we've advertised?
Sure. So as of about 5 minutes ago, we have 3122 responses. And we started with all Council Rock School District users. So this is through Blackboard. So these are resident email addresses and mailing lists from the community signing up for newsletters, from what we take from eSchool when parents are registering a student. So that was all Council Rock, anybody with a CRSD account, all parents, all community members, all PTOs, the superintendent parents group, and all registrations. That's brand new registration, all those emails. Social media, we advertise on Facebook, 20, 21, 22, and 23 of this week. Instagram, we boosted the ad on Facebook on May 22nd. It is on YouTube and on Council Rock TV. We are in the process of dropping it off at the libraries in the area, the senior center. On the website, there is an information hub, as Ms. Crawford mentioned, and short of doing a robocall, which we thought about that, but we reserved that for emergency, and that would be kind of treacherous maybe. So again, if you can think of another way, and if anybody in the audience can think of another way to get it into the hands of the people, and we're trying to focus on people sharing it, because that's what social media does best. So if you know a family that has children that might not even be in the district now, or just a young couple, just like it and share it.
I got it directly from the patch to
Well,
my email.
So that was 3 press releases that I sent. And they literally cut, paste, and publish, and I knew they would do that, so that's great. That's another way.
Will Hanover be able to provide, along with the survey results, the distribution of how many came from this advertisement source, how many came from that, how many came from this district or that district?
They didn't ask the question, how did you hear about the survey?
Okay, all right. Well, I'm even thinking from an IP address standpoint, if they're looking at that.
I don't know, they might, I don't know.
Yeah,
We never asked that question.
okay. That would be interesting from an IP standpoint. That should give us a little bit more localization data. On the topic of quantifiable data, I'm interested to know from this administration, if full-day kindergarten is approved, how would we quantifiably track the educational improvement within Council Rock? On that topic of reviewing quantifiable data, this district goes through PSSAs regularly, and there's a lot of information out there, and it's an interesting exercise to go through it. However, I've also heard in the past that that may not be a good indicator of education of the student. So it would be interesting with community outreach if there was at some point a discussion to the community about how to view the PSSA and the Keystone data for high school, and how does this district respond to the various different ranking programs that say that you're great or you're not so great, or you're in the top this or you're in the bottom that, and how does that align? Because I guess to some degree you take it pretty rigorously and you look at it and you try to figure out how can we respond as educators, right? But from another angle, you're saying, well, it doesn't really tell the whole story. So understanding the whole story would be really helpful, especially as we're considering full-day kindergarten or pursuing educational excellence. Because educational excellence to me means improvement in this quantifiable data that's trackable, that's consistent, that's repetitive. And it would be nice to see that and review other areas of where we can provide that help to students that need help. It was wonderful to see, once again, about the textbooks, to see images of those textbooks so that the community that are watching this presentation online can understand what the cover looks like and maybe pursue and see if they can get it. It would be nice if we had extended hours for people to come in. I understand there's copyright issues. Figuring out some way to help the community look at what their child or children could be educated through and whether that's a good data and if there's quantifiable data to doing that. Similarly, thanks very much for doing that. You've done a great presentation for multiple times of coming in and providing that. I wonder if this administration could provide a full course list to the board, just to understand all of the areas that we currently cover and how things fit with itself. You did a great job explaining how these pilot programs fit and dovetail and connect dots, and it would be nice for the board to see if there's a full curriculum list of all the course offerings that we have. That was a bunch, but...
So let me try to take that apart a little bit at a time. If we move forward with full-day kindergarten, with data, quantifiable data, there are always variables, right? So like even the cohorts of students that are moving through, PDE has changed the PSSA rules and benchmarks. PSSA, as you know, starts in 3rd grade. So some of that will be difficult to achieve, particularly at the kindergarten age. A lot of that is developmental, the social interaction. So that, and I will say to you that I have already had conversations with Dr. Barnes on that, and I gave him 18 districts across the county and across the state to look at to see if we could pull any data out from that. We've tracked when they began full-day kindergarten, we've followed, and when I say we, I mean Tom. Tom has followed those cohorts the best he can. Some of the earliest implementation of full-day kindergarten that we found was around 2012, much like, I think Nicole said, Colonial. I think one of the districts in Bucks County began 2012. It's not easy to sift through. So that's the first thing, but we will continue to look at that. The second thing, you've heard Tammy come in front of this board and community many months ago when we talked about building an online version of every course offering that we have in the district. We're near completion on that. Tammy, Alan, Nicole can talk about that a little bit more in detail, but it would include everything we have, all the offerings we have from K to 12, so that as a parent, we can't put some of this stuff online because of copyright, but you will be able to go in and click on a button and see that in 10th grade, you have a world history class, it's worth 1 credit, a synopsis of the course, and that is something that our parents and our community could easily go to. Tammy, can you take 30 seconds just to give an overview of that? Sure. Or Alan, Nicole?
What we worked on is creating planned course documents. So in curriculum, there's all different lingo. So the planned course document is kind of the state chapter 4 gives you different things that you have to identify. So the planned course document looks at, as Dr. Sanko said, the course, what grades it is, what credit you get for it, like in high school, if it's a 0.5 or 1.0. Description of the course, what it looks like. Underneath it, it kind of gives what instructional methods are being used, how it's being assessed, what materials are used, and then in the bottom part of it, it would say kind of in 9th grade, we're using US history, ISBN number, like all that information, any technology that's used. So we're almost complete with those. Just cleaning up and putting those together. The thought was to quantify that and put it in a place like on the website that where you could go in and access and see if you wanted to go in. But for any of these, you could just go to the ISBN number and you can go to Amazon
Right, yeah.
and look to see, to get them, and they'll give you that little preview, whereas like, you can't do those things with it. So the hope is to put and have all that complete. For a simplified version of that, if you just want to see the courses at the middle school and high school, it's planned course guides, and some of that information you'd see repeated then on that. The next step in what we're working with curriculum and codifying across the district is then to make the curriculum maps. And kind of referred to with Mr. Devlin is when you create the curriculum maps, you're looking at the units, standards, and how the course is put together, and then you do your access points with special education, ELL, so that it's a comprehensive piece. So that's the next piece that we'd be working on for that. And then, of course, with that, you have your curriculum piece, you have the instruction piece, and you have the assessment piece. So the assessment piece, like if you're looking at DIBELS, if you're looking at PSSA, is digging down to the root cause of why those scores are that way. When you find that, and that's the process of what we're looking at for DIBELS right now, is then you go back to understand why those scores are that way so that you can adjust and make the changes for everything like that. So it's that whole cycle that has to go together. And the one piece that now is very prevalent is the technology piece as well, as I talked about. Most of these have huge technology components with instruction. So the curriculum in many different forms for different stakeholders, the instructional piece of what it looks like, the assessment is how are we doing, how do we change, how do we meet the needs of our students, and the technology to make sure we're using the most up-to-date things that are the best resources.
Outstanding, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? I think, Ms. Gary, you presented to us a couple of meetings ago, your first version of the planned course curriculum in a science, and it was presented. So it's amazing that you are almost complete.
Yeah, they actually are, like.
That's a lot of work.
Materials there, it's just now making sure that they're all consistent and.
Correct.
So that's.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. I guess before we just moving on in terms of, I know Mr. Dickey brought up the Reading Horizons K-12 program, which is new to the district, and it's great that we have research-based, the science of reading. These programs aren't created by the professionals, the experts in literacy and teaching reading to our youngest. The programs aren't created, I don't believe, to my knowledge, with a half-day implementation. These programs are the scope and sequence, the design processes, they're all highly researched and timelined for the teacher to pick up their teacher's manual and teach the students in their classroom. I believe in our current 2.5-hour literacy program, it may be about 40 minutes. I am sure that kindergarten teachers struggle to implement a new program with fidelity when it's meant to be implemented in a 90-block period that can be broken up throughout the day. In terms of extra learning, I mean, my child is long beyond kindergarten, but Ms. Gary also presented a kindergarten science kit, a hands-on learning, which is phenomenal. It's exciting, it's fun. I've taught those kids myself. I'm pretty sure that there isn't a whole lot of time in their 2.5-hour day to do any of those fun things, let alone read that nice big book at circle time. What about math? We talk about literacy, but there's also math, and there's a lot of research that the students, when they have full-day kindergarten or in school, have opportunities to play with manipulatives, to learn about numbers and number concepts, all the things that are basics and fundamentals that they don't get necessarily in a half day or a daycare, that they would get in Council Rock. Kindergarten through their graduation year. It is like the foundation. I don't know how we can say that there's no benefit that can be quantifiable. We talk about the specials. Currently, kindergartners get 2 specials. So what about STEAM? What about the extra play time or the purposeful play? Or as Ms. Crawford spoke about so eloquently about, the social emotional aspect and getting ready for first grade and the rigor of learning and being able to get through a school day. What about going to lunch and riding the bus and just as a young child getting off the bus and going into school? There's a love of learning that happens. If it's not in that 2.5 hours of everything being crammed into learning about reading, maybe they learn to love math, or maybe they learn to love STEM or STEAM because they have that special now. I just think it's hard to say we don't do something for the benefit of all of Council Rock. from now until, the future, that because we can't quantify a piece of data, or that there's, extra learning doesn't happen beyond third grade, which I find hard to believe. Learning can be assessed and evaluated in a variety of ways. So, thank you.
So the last thing we have, just prior to public comment then, just some friendly reminders. It's a busy end of the year calendar. So May 29th, we have our budget forum scheduled for Newtown Middle School. On June 3rd, that's a Monday evening, we have Middle Bucks Institute of Technology, their senior awards and recognition night is going to take place at William Tennant High School. June 4th, we have our full-day kindergarten information session. June 7th, at North and South, we have the senior car parades, and that will take place in the morning at both campuses. On June 10th, North and South will have their senior recognition nights, opportunity to honor invited seniors who have received various accolades. And then finally, our culminating events would be graduation on June 11th. Council Rock North will be 4 p.m. at Walt Snyder Stadium and 6 p.m. Council Rock South Gymnasium. Thank you, Ms. Khan.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the committee? I just ask that I can start over there, just questions, comments. If you would please limit your comments to about 3 minutes. I'll keep a timer and state your name and your township. Anyone wanted to speak there?
So I am Desiree Hall, and I'm from Motivated Township. My sons are in the ILS program at Holland Elementary, and my oldest son came from a very large school that had an ILS program in a different district years and years ago. He's 17 now, he's a 4.5 GPA, excellent student. Partly because Holland Elementary was such a small school. I think Good News program is phenomenal. I think it's good for what it is, but I also just wanted to make it known that the fact that Holland was such a small community with an ILS in it was what my child needed and many others. I think having two separate schools that are two different entities, like there are kids with special needs that require and thrive in a small setting, there are ones like my daughter with dyslexia who would do great in a social large school. So I mean, there are just variability there in learning. My son was able to pull, if you're worried about budgeting, my oldest son had a one-on-one. He had major supports that made him much less inclusive, and we were able to pull all of that because that school is so small. So that it saved the school district thousands of dollars by just having this small setting as an option. So I understand the reasoning for, wanting to move programs. I totally get it budget-wise, but in my eyes, as a parent of 6 in the district, 4 of which have special needs, I've seen it actually go better budget-wise the other way, full circle. So that is why I came tonight, and she had a comment just about how super accepting and loving the kids are at Holland with all different abilities. And because the majority of the kids are not one way or the other in that school, since it is a smaller setting, so it's like equally balanced. Those kids grow up and they have lots of support, there's no bullies. It's an excellent setting as an option. Good News, great for even like if she needed it, but just saying.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I say one thing?
Sure.
Some people that came in did not sign.
Was there anyone that came in late that didn't sign in?
Or at least to sign in before you leave.
Before you leave, yeah, that'd be great. Anyone else from the?
Yeah, Ernest Forsyth, Brick Farm. Kind of going off of what she was saying, me and my wife have a genuine concern when we hear anything about moving, our special needs child from one school to another, especially at such a critical age where, what I find personally, unless you're a parent that has a special needs child, it's very difficult to, even as a human being, understand how hard it is for your kid to foster relationships. I watched my daughter join sports teams. I watched kids ignore her or view her as a burden you have a place like Holland where it's taken a very long time for my daughter to be around kids that have an integrated environment, where those types of things I haven't seen. I've seen them in other areas, but not there. I don't even want to think about having to explain to my daughter that because and I'm saying this isn't the reason, but hypothetically, if there was a full-time kindergarten and things had to get shuffled, that she's gonna go into a school that is not used to integration, not used to children with her needs, and then have to work through and reestablish those relationships. That's about the most despicable thing I think I could do to my daughter, is try to tell her that. The little crumbs that she's been able to pull together from the few decent freaking people in this world, we're going to now separate those and expect you at this age to reset. So it is in my best interest for my daughter to advocate that, whether it be a grandfathering process or some kind of consideration. I know a lot of time and energy gets put in surveys and things like that. We may be doing full-time this, we may be redistricting, and we want to hear what all the people have to say about that. But the children that have the deepest level of effect from this type of thing, from a seismic viewpoint, are the special needs kids that have to work twice as hard, even to have the simplest of relationships. So I'll leave it at that. But my intention is to, be as involved as I can be to at least see this through and understand any
30
decisions that are
seconds.
being made in this direction. So thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Anybody else?
I'll speak. My name is Christy Williams. I'm in Northampton Township. Good evening to the board and the other members who are here and the administration. I speak for myself, my husband, on behalf of our 8-year-old son, Jonathan. The school district recommended the ILS program when our son first began school. We declined that and placed him in his home school, thinking that was best for him and that school could provide the support that he needed. We were again recommended that he be placed in ILS, the program at Holland, for first grade. We hesitantly agreed and moved our son. After 2 years at Holland, our son just started making actual friends this year. Your proposal to remove a child with disabilities from a community who knows him and supports him at the start of 4th grade is damaging in so many ways. This move would have social, emotional, and educational setbacks for him and the other students that would move with him. It would last for years, if not his lifetime. This should be the very last solution to the space problem at Holland, as well as a solution to full-day kindergarten to allow for space for that. And that move should only be considered after every other option has been exhausted thoroughly. Moving this population of students is not putting students first always. Richborough Elementary feeds into Newtown Middle School and Council Rock North. However, ILS would flow back into Holland Middle and Council Rock South. So these students would again have to work to make new friendships after missing out on years with their former peers from HES. The actual idea that you could move this group of marginalized, disabled students and ask them to be successful in this setup shows your extreme lack of understanding of individuals with disabilities. This is the exact way to alienate our children further. Please do not move them. In addition, there are several other areas of concern that the board and district should seriously consider. Special education parents in the district greatly desire the creation of a special education parent advisory committee. This would allow collaboration of ideas, feedback, and input when making decisions that affect all of our students. There is an urgent need for quality professional development for not only teachers, but all staff that work with these special education students, including general education teachers, special education teachers, classroom aides, and others. I would like to add that if all Council Rock schools had inclusive practices, that I might not be standing before you tonight requesting this. Also, finally, I would like to just count our students as whole people. Just because they're in a class for a portion of time doesn't make them invisible or a portion. They should be counted with the total number of students in the class. Revise your policy to count these students in all special ed programs in general education settings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Danielle Zusin, Northampton Township. I think you guys all know me and know my children. They're in the autistic support program at Holland Elementary. They are still without access to grade level modified curriculum. I've been asking for 2 years and I'm still waiting, and I don't think that you guys would ever think that that was okay for any other student within this district. My children are not counted towards general education classroom size numbers, so if their general ed classroom is capped, they don't count. So you're going to usher in a bunch of kids with high support needs into a general education classroom with a teacher in general education who does not have any professional development regarding the special needs population, paraprofessionals who do not have training, and you expect my children to be successful in that setting. I was really excited to come here tonight to see that special education was being addressed at the education committee. While I appreciate the opportunity to have coffee with Mr. Devlin on a Saturday, we need a special education parent advisory committee. I was at that meeting on April 17th. I know a lot of the board members were there as well. We know a lot of the parents were upset and angry. Why is nobody talking about this? Why is nobody addressing this? My kids are going into 2nd grade and I'm still been asking the same questions for 2 years. 2 years, no answers, 2 years. I see all this curriculum, all this stuff, reading. My kids aren't being taught how to read. My kids don't have curriculum. There's no modified curriculum. There's no adaptive academic. Please go visit, instead of visiting full-day kindergartens, please visit special education classrooms in other districts that are doing a great job, that are doing more than what we are doing. The problem is that nobody thinks that this needs to be fixed and to be improved. I want my kids here. My kids deserve a seat at the table with everybody else. And they're not getting it. They're not. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Nicole Gilchrist from Newtown Township. I've shared, I think, with most of you. First of all, I guess I am very grateful that special education is on the education committee agenda. Sincerely, I think that's a huge step forward. So I appreciate the opportunity to give public comment about it for the first time as an agenda item since I moved into this district also for special education. So I guess a couple of things just to echo what the other parents said. First of all, I took notes like I always do. Mr. Roosevelt, you made great points about quantitative data is very important to you. Everybody said, I think at least once, educational excellence. I've shared multiple times with all of you the fact that our district numbers for special education indicators, they're available, they're indicators that are available by the Department of Education. Ours are well below average. We are, when you say that we have top rated special education services in Council Rock, I would just ask based on what? Because the data does not show that anymore. So we have some work to do, and that's what was referenced in the April 17th meeting. And what I've heard parents say there and here and everywhere I go is that parents want a special education parent advisory committee to have meaningful input into policy and practices. This is a slide that was shared, and I thank you for sharing these on the Council Rock website. I was able to cut this directly from the Department of Education presentation that many of you also attended. The heading says strategies to bolster family engagement in Council Rock School District. The first bullet point says implement family engagement across all school policies and procedures. Second to last bullet point, include families in updating your school's mission, vision, and goals. So I hear that we have a special education plan that's due in 2025. Well, that's great that we start planning it. There's nothing stopping us from doing these things now. There's nothing stopping us from putting together an improvement plan now. So the other thing that was shared at that meeting that you went to was this. This is from the Pennsylvania Department of Education. They have this sheet that I printed that, based on the resources that were shared, tell us how we can best support your family engagement needs. Let us assist you with a customized support plan. The Pennsylvania Bureau of Special Education and Patent Consultants will provide a systemic professional development customized support free of charge. So this, I mean, the district offered this to parents, and I thank you for it. But we're not following what the Department of Ed is recommending. So that was recommended, this slide was shared there, our comprehensive plan, Council Roth's comprehensive plan, in effect now, says that we will have an active special education parent advisory committee with an anticipated completion date of January 1st, 2025. Are we working on that, or are we gonna forget that? I guess it's just confusing. This is a list that I shared with all of you. These are other neighboring districts and top-rated districts in Pennsylvania who have a special education parent advisory committee. It's done everywhere. This is a handout from the Department of Ed. It's specifically, it's on, I can share it with anyone who wants it, it's on special education parent advisory committees. And it says, parents should be invited to be decision makers in issues that are larger than those that immediately affect their own children. Parents or stakeholders should be involved in authentic work addressing all areas of school improvement. So I guess when parents are told that we can't be involved in these decisions because parents don't dictate policy, that's unfair. There's a parent advisory committee. We committed to having a special education parent advisory committee. And I don't understand why we're just getting, why it's not actually being done. So I love this district. I do not genuinely want to sound like I'm here just to complain. I want to work with you. My kids love it here, but the quantitative data, educational excellence, these are not my opinions. The data shows us we need to make improvements. The data is on the Pennsylvania Department of Education website. I can show you how to find it. It is not my data. It shows that we are below average and below 8 other districts in Bucks County. So let's get a plan together. Coffee chats are great. It's not a plan for improvement. We shared with our families how to do it on April 17th, so can we please do it? Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Yes.
Bill Mervin, in Township, I've got a daughter that's at Holland Elementary School, and graduated son from South last year, and I have 2 children who go to Calvary Christian Academy. My son was in gifted program, so we sent him here, and my daughter's in intensive learning. And certain schools she went to, she got moved to Holland, so we said, so she was at the original elementary school for a year, and got moved to Holland this past year, and she has absolutely thrived in the program. As many parents, here have pointed out, it's difficult, there's a lot of challenges in creating connections, and there's something about the school, the principal in particular is amazing, where, they have the individual support they have in their kind of own group, but they also get integrated and welcomed by the other students there. This is certainly not a gotcha, I may not have read it factually in terms of just, I think just kind of paraphrasing, but I was able to see a video recently, and one of the board members at one of the meetings speaking about, I'm thinking, again, they're kind of move locations at the end for graduating, and talking about the impact of, the community and the kind of place where you've got your roots, and this is kind of general education, with these kids in this special needs children. I think that's even more with some of just the social challenges that they have, and so, I don't know whether or not this potentially make move for the kindergarten or not, but there's been some talk here about, whether we should have quantifiable data before we spend that kind of money, or whether or not, abstract, kind of, emotional and certain other things that, and not to poo-poo it, but, whether we actually need data that this is a good investment, but, I can tell you for myself and the parents that we talk to regularly, that we have actual quantifiable results to how much these kids are thriving in this program, and I need to see that taking part removed like furniture.
I want to say something.
Sure.
My daughter is in 4th grade now, and I get the call from Mrs. Devlin. They will move the program, and she will go to 6th grade, and they want to move her in the last year of Holland to Ridgeboro. I don't think so. It doesn't sense. She knows all the stuff in a school, library, restroom. It's like new beginning for her to move her for the last year of Holland to Ridgeboro. But please think about that. I hope you will help us as we are here today.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Well,
Like we talked about.
well, so you, Mr. Segget's talking about including kids in the general education classroom there at Holland. But I did reach out to all the families. Nothing has been set in stone. I met with a few families. I didn't meet with everybody. Matter of fact, I was supposed to meet with a family today. They didn't show up to see what options could be there.
I emailed you to cancel.
I'm sorry.
I emailed you to cancel.
I apologize.
I just wanted to just not show up.
So I was meeting with families to say, if there needs to be a change, what are the things we were looking at? To gather information to see what can be done. A lot of families talked about grandfathering students. I think I reached out maybe to a dozen families who would have been current grades that would be affected. So I did meet with some families just to see what their thoughts were, to gather something. I did not report back to Dr. Sanko because I did not finish yet gathering the information. So nothing is happening yet. We're just gathering information just to share where we were going, what's going on. The classes are full, and that was some of the looking at what was going on. We talked about Richboro Elementary School because the program that your children are in closely resembles the programs over there at Richboro Elementary School, where there's already a culture and so forth. I do listen, I do hear. I was just wanted to meet with families to see what's going on. There's nothing that's being forced upon any family here. I was just trying to meet with families to see what can be done, whether it be grandfathering or so forth. So there's no, so that was it. I mean, I know I'm not,
And I really appreciate the phone call, the transparency, the communication, just to let us know that you're thinking about it. But of course, with a mom, all of us with a child with special needs, we're panicked. We love Holland. Holland is an amazing place. We want our kids to say.
Even that will be regular kid, I provide.
Yes, Holland is an amazing, my daughter goes to Richboro Elementary, and I talked to you about this. Richboro works really well for my daughter, Holland really works well for my son. And I would love for them to be together about it.
Right, so then we talk about different ideas. What would be, if it had happened, what would be palatable, or if it didn't happen, what would be palatable? So I was just meeting with families.
No, and that's,
come on, I mean.
no, wonderful that you are, yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
Can I just make a comment about MA too? Because I feel like our district would benefit a lot if you have like a nurse or some medical.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry. MA?
Medical assistants, like
Okay.
not, like, I don't mean medical assistants like low income
Sure,
for medical assistants. I mean, there's a lot of parents here that have special needs children that may be qualified for that, even though you have your own private insurance, it picks up the gap, which then pays our school district to provide some services that we are getting. So I know like a lot of us who maybe already have medical assistance, we sign the form and it helps get the school district money. I do feel like our school district will benefit if we have somebody like a liaison, somebody that could like talk to parents that have kids like my own that maybe don't know that your income in the state of Pennsylvania, we're a medical state. So it does not matter. You get a gap between your insurance, what your insurance won't pay. If you have medical assistance for any reason, whether it's just to bridge gaps or not, it'll help the school district if your child qualifies for it. And a lot of kids do, and just parents don't think they would qualify because of their income, especially being a higher income area like we are. Parents don't always realize that, so. And also, my kids are all Holland Elementary zone, by the way, so just so you know, like, it won't change my children where they're at, even though my twins are ILS at elementary, at Holland Elementary, I can keep them there. But my son Carl is a quantifiable result. You guys were able to get all that extra needs that he didn't need because he could find the library and he could find the lunchroom that he could not find in a larger school. And other kids are not all like that. Good Now works for a lot of people that I personally know did better in an autistic support program like Good Now, just as an example, like how Richboro is larger. That's all. I'm just saying having the two actually might be saving you more money than you realize.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Meeting adjourned? Thank you. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah.